Some announcements before we get started. Call for volunteers. There are still openings on boards and committees. You can find those on the volunteer tab on the town webpage, the home page. COA newsletter for March and April 2026 is now available. It's also in the select board packet for tonight. Greenbelt is holding an American Farmland Trust and Mass Farm Bureau event, planning for the future of your farm. That's going to be next Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the Topsfield Fairgrounds. They are asking people to register in advance for that. And finally, I'm going to be holding office hours again this Saturday from 8 to 10 a.m. And there's a link from the agenda you can click on to sign up, as well as on the home page of the town website. Regular business, public comment. Anybody wishing to make a public comment? I received an email to the select board email address today, which I'm going to read as a public comment. This is from a resident on Old Wharf Lane. Sorry, just lost it. Okay. So it starts, I'd like to thank and commend Highway Superintendent Butch Hills for getting National Grid to top several dead ash trees along way to the river that were constant threats to the power lines. On several occasions, tree limbs came down on the lines and knocked out power to the entire street. We met with National Grid late last year, and for the past 2 days, its contractor, Northern Tree Service, has been doing the work. Thank you, Butch. It's nice to give employees credit where credit is due.
Hey, I'll give Bush credit too. He does a great job.
He does.
Nice the resident acknowledges it.
Yeah. Okay, item B, town manager updates.
All right, first item, you obviously both were there for the public hearing Tuesday evening at Pentucket for their budget hearing. I thought, personally, I didn't think there were any surprises. It was obviously a different format superintendents used in the past several years. I kind of liked it. I thought there were some improvements in terms of the kind of quality of the presentation, but the fundamental situation is very, very difficult for all of the towns, but in particular, our neighboring communities are seeing, Merrimack and Groveland are seeing proportionally greater increases in their assessment due to increase in enrollment. And obviously that's causing a lot of strain. So I want to make sure we wanted to put this very first on tonight's agenda so that people watching know that the school committee will meet again this coming Tuesday, March 3rd. That is the night that they will vote an amount. So during the presentation this past Tuesday, the superintendent ran through 3 different scenarios. He ran through one that was the budget book that they had circulated and posted. They did a different scenario that would reduce that amount by $825,000, which would bring the percentage increase in the town of Merrimack down to 3%, which is a number that historically Merrimack has carried in their budget as kind of a starting point for school budgeting. And the third would be a more drastic set of cuts on the order of, I think it was 1.6 million. So the school committee this coming Tuesday evening is going to be asked to vote an amount, and that will then be the amount that goes forward in our budgeting. In my presentation of the budget, of the town budget back on February 12th, I took the liberty of using that middle number, which reflected a reduction of $825,000 across the board, not just West Newbury, obviously, based on my expectation, based on conversations with the administration over there, that's probably what the school committee will vote. But I don't know what you guys felt, but I didn't come away from that meeting with any clarity at all as to what the school committee is in fact going to vote. They may vote the budget book they proposed, they may vote something different. So and I think it's great they're considering that, because there's a lot of implications whether they go with the proposed number or a reduced number. That is something that people will see in terms of staffing and level of service or programs, or whether kids are paying fees for different programs and things. So I think the school committee should consider all the options. It's probably likely they'll go with that middle number. But if they don't, obviously we'll adjust our budget accordingly based on whatever they vote, but, I'm sure there was a lot of frustration, it seems, you know, every year there's a lot of frustration on chapter 70 and that the state funding doesn't even come close to keeping pace with the, increased cost the school is facing. I'm sympathetic to that. At the same time, I'm also very sympathetic to my peers in, Merrimack and Groveland who are saying yes, but the towns are facing those same increases in health insurance and, retirement assessments and utilities and everything. So, I think it was, you know, a pretty sobering meeting. It seems to me that the district does, in my observation, a terrific job with the resources they have. I can say that as a town manager and as a parent, but they're squeezed and they're squeezed more every single year. So, I think, I don't know how much of what was presented Tuesday night was in any way responsive to some of the concerns that had been expressed about, the cost impact on towns and the reality of Prop 2.5.
So in the middle, scenario, just Groveland would have to have an override, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you know, under the regional agreement, if 2 of the 3 towns pass the budget, the 3rd town has to raise the money, so.
It's a terrible situation now.
Yeah, I mean, their nightmare scenario is that if, you know, if it were to pass in Merrimack and West Newbury, and they either did not propose an override or they proposed an override and failed, they would have no choice but to find that money in their town budget, which would mean, staffing cuts and cuts to service and in all likelihood cuts to absolutely critical services.
And any of the discussions you've had, have they ever considered looking at the administration, you know, administrative positions rather than just, you know, front facing student positions?
The, to be very frank, we don't get into that
Okay.
level of like what positions would cut. I fully, I'm sure the superintendent and the business manager have those discussions with the school committee, whether as a committee or with individual members. They do not have those conversations with us.
Yeah, I just feel like, you know, yes, the state chapter 70 system is terrible, but that's been like that forever. So it seems like, you know, we just need to say, okay, this is wrong, but we still have to live with it instead of just focusing so much on that, you know. I mean, I appreciate the superintendent's trying to change that, but it's a reality. Do you have any thoughts on this, Chris?
I'll go back to when I was on a school committee, which seemed like another life ago. We'd hired a new superintendent, that's exactly what he did, he eliminated assistant superintendent position, assistant principal positions. And peeled, I think it was $1.2 million out of the budget, because he felt it was more critical not to cut teacher positions.
Mhm.
So he would sacrifice administration for teachers. So maybe too aggressive in some people's eyes, it's gotta be a balance there. But I'll pick up on your comment about the chapter 70, that's been discussed in the last 10 years as being the problem. Somebody's gotta work, you can't just say it every year, there's gotta be some method to address that more seriously, I guess. I mean, if I was on that, you know, if I was on the school committee, I'd be with the legislators the whole time saying, how do we get this fixed? I mean, you can complain about it, but it's falling on deaf ears, so you gotta come up with a different process to fix the problem. I don't know what it is, because I haven't dug deep into it, but every year, yeah, even with the middle budget that they had, how many teachers were they gonna cut? It was staggering.
And they were talking on the order of 16 positions.
Right, that's a lot, I mean, that's.
And he did say just positions, they weren't necessarily teaching, that's why
Right.
I'm wondering if there's any consideration.
I'm sure, I mean, it's not something we're talking about, I would be shocked if the superintendent wasn't looking at all options, including administrative positions. I just can't speak to that
Yeah.
by direct knowledge, but he doesn't strike me as someone who's like dogmatic about, and he's obviously someone who places a great personal and professional value on education.
Mhm.
And you know, he's you know, he's one of the best superintendent I've dealt with. He does not seem closed-minded. I just don't have direct knowledge of that.
Somebody did bring up about one of the reserve funds that they were funding,
Yeah,
and there was really no traction on that. That's, again,
Yeah,
I would look at something like that if I was sitting in that seat, it's like, can we forego it this year? I know anytime you forego anything, invite you take this thing again the next year. But sometimes you gotta kick the can down the road till you find a real solution.
I think Groveland had a fair point though. I mean, they can't afford to put money in your stabilization fund, you know, so.
So why is it, was half a million or more, right?
Yeah.
I think it's 550 above, or 500 something
Yeah,
above the
yeah,
current
550,
year.
575, something like that.
Something above the current year.
I'd probably be saying, hey, is there any reserve fund we can draw down to cover something, which is what we do here.
Yeah, well, and also to say, you know, how tangible is their future capital projects plan to know that that's an amount that's needed. And one
Yeah.
comment that I heard on Tuesday night in that discussion was on the replacement of the turf field in 10 years and wanting to build up a reserve so that when the time comes, they'd be able to do that out of their stabilization rather than you know, hitting that year's tax. But that's one example. I don't know if that's, you know, I don't know how much of that constitutes that incremental increase of 500 some odd for next year. But I think that's a very fair question to ask.
I did have one question. I'm in Groveland, somebody from the FinCom, they were saying that 30% of their users of their town is on public water. That didn't seem right to me. Did you hear that? You said it twice. Did you notice that? I
I
assumed it was
remember
the
what
whole
she,
town.
yeah, I didn't kind of take note of the percentage. Do you think it would be more than that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I think it'd have to be more if they're putting in a
Yeah.
treatment plant.
Yeah, so he must have just had his facts wrong, but I was just really struck by that. I mean, I thought ours was low. You know, we're over 60%, so. All right, well, it'll be interesting to see what shakes out next week, right?
yeah. Next item, just a very brief item. I just wanted to kind of formally at least get this on your radar. I know it's on your radar because you've been tracking a bit what's going on with Board of Health a couple of weeks ago, but there is a filing pending before them, request for variance from Title V, and that petition has raised some legal questions, so the health agent had sent that along to me. I sent it over to town council. We've had a conversation about it, and I've had a conversation with the proponents' council just to make sure we kind of fully understand the facts of what's envisioned there. So I just want to let you know, this is something you can expect to hear more about. You know, as time goes on. Right now, there's a few legal questions pending with town council. As of this moment, it doesn't seem that this is going to be a matter that the select board has any formal role on, but at the same time, just like anything going on in town, you may choose to get more involved or less involved. That's your option. From a regulatory standpoint, it's before the Board of Health with the Title V issue. There's also some separate zoning issues that we've referred to council, and depending on the advice we're given, that would affect you know, what any proposal would need in terms of permitting and what board or boards it would be before. Let's see, next item, the MSBA Statement of Interest. We had a meeting on Monday. Notwithstanding the weather, we and that had been on the calendar for a couple of weeks, and very substantive meeting, lengthy. We went through basically the statement of interest. There's a template, you know, that the state provides that you fill out, and it's, you know, it's a 43-page document. There's a ton of white space on there. A lot of that is space to fill in narratives and so forth, but we went through every single item. That meeting included myself, Brian, Richard, which is kind of the town team. Caitlin Barker is going to be helpful as well. She was out on vacation Monday, so she wasn't part of the meeting, but that's kind of the core on our side. Then on the school, it was Jonathan Seymour, who's been there right along, but also Greg Gilligan, the principal of Page, and Justin Bartholomew and Suzanne Wallace, the business manager, were also part of the meeting. As this gets closer to a vote with the school committee, obviously they need to keep their ear to the ground, so they're fully aware of the direction, which they are, and they have been. And then we had Imelda, Barnhurst, our architectural consultant from P&L present. So we went through the entire statement of interest, and I put together a memo in your packet, which highlights the 3 items that are going to be kind of the focus of our narrative. And I do have in front of me kind of the specific questions that we need to respond to on each of those. I won't go through those in detail. A lot of this is going to be assembling documentation, both from the conditions assessment that was finalized last spring, as well as other studies and reports that we have on file over the many years. Prior to engaging GNAP for the conditions assessment about 3 years ago, we had gotten from Pentucket, from Greg Haddon, the former facilities guy, a thumb drive with hundreds and hundreds of documents, every report, every study, it has invoices, it has all the records. Greg was incredibly meticulous. He gave that all to us. And early in that process, prior to engaging GNAP, Christine Wallace had put all of that into a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet with all the reports, the dates. We have a very good record of everything that's been done over a long period of time. So we have a wealth of information to draw from. The conditions assessment is going to be the primary source, but we do have documentation like very specific on different systems or different components of the school over time. So this is the statement of interest. We obviously want to put our best foot forward, and that's something that, as we went through the division of labor between the school and the town, there were a number of items that Brian and I agreed that we will take the lead on, and the school will take the lead on a number of theirs. And then we are gonna, by March 9th, which is 2 weeks from Monday, the goal is that we have working drafts of the complete thing, and then we can start refining those and making those better as we move toward the April 17th filing deadline with MSBA. So I wanted to put this on. You're well aware this is going on. There's going to be a vote of the school committee. I think it's probably going to be their April meeting, which is just a few days before the deadline. But you know, they're going to keep their board fully apprised so that there's no last minute surprises. But I want you to understand, which I know you do, this is a major work item. This is a huge amount of time and effort that myself and some other staff are needing to put in the next few weeks, which obviously overlaps with budget and capital and articles and all the other things we're doing. So I just on there, partly just for the community as a whole, to just understand this paid school MSBA initiative is a major effort and is expected to accelerate and become more and more significant impact on staff time and board time. Ideally, if we're accepted into the program, which we won't know till December, at that point, it's gonna be a major effort and something that people need to that I think in one way or another is going to affect every single person in this town and generations to come, whatever comes out of that. So it's a very, very big deal. It's funny, and we'll get to this a little later in the discussion of the CPA, or not CPA, the comp plan scope. But, we talked about that a little bit in our meeting earlier this week with members of the planning board, and just what a massive set of issues this is. And that's gotta be kind of fully, in sync and in coordination with the comp planning process. And it was a little surprised. I don't know that was their starting point, as seeing that as like a comp planning issue. And I said, well, it is. So anyway, we'll get into that.
I mean, that was one of our top 5 issues facing the town.
Their comments were that the master plan, they called it that, address land utilization.
Oh,
So,
nice.
and Angus had Mass General with the 9 categories and what could be encompassed, and hopefully they'll embrace that a little more eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, needless to say, whatever's in a comp plan is not in any way binding on the district, and we wouldn't purport to have that decision-making authority on necessarily, but it's certainly the comp plan is the vehicle to sort out a lot of these issues in terms of where does the town see itself in 20, 30, 50 years.
On page school, have our state legislators been made aware that we're going in for this, and should they be in the loop?
They should be in the loop, and I think we have not sent them anything in recollection, so that's a great heads up, is to notify them that we'll be filing. That's a great heads up, I think.
And then they can advocate for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So do you feel like the Pentucket staff is sharing the workload, or is this?
Very much,
Okay.
yeah. Jonathan's done a great job. He's quarterbacking it. A lot of the things that they're taking the lead on are things like, so some of the sets of questions are about investments that have been made. And those are things where we have really good records of what the town has appropriated for different projects, certainly in the last decade. And so those were things that, you know, we felt we were pretty comfortable, Ryan and I kind of taking the lead on that aspect. Others are more toward how do the deficiencies in the building that we're identifying affect the educational program or the school's ability to do things or not do things, and those are obviously things we're not involved with. So I think it's a reasonable division of labor. I'm very glad that that the voters supported our proposal at the fall town meeting to have Gianap under contract.
Yeah.
Because we're not asking them to provide the lead effort on this, because they really already did that with the conditions assessment. But having them as a resource and having a budget that they can bill against to help make sure that we get it right is really helpful. Yeah, I've been very pleased with the level of effort from the school to this point. But we knew all along it was going to be a joint effort, and we would need to do a fair amount as well.
Yeah.
Next item, just keeping you apprised, we'll continue to stay in touch with MassDOT regarding the stated intent to put in basically barriers on either side, or like crash prevention on either side of the Rocks Village Bridge. That is still very much on their work plan. It's not moving as quickly as you know, when I talked to them last summer, early fall, they thought there might be conceptual plans in circulation by around the end of the calendar year. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I did have a very substantial update from the district engineer and kind of paraphrase that in my memo to you. So that sets out what, you know, where they are in terms of land survey, and they're now talking more like May or June. And so I think in my memo, I just put summer, because it's not our timeline to meet, but we are, you know, kind of keeping on them so that continues to move forward. It's very important.
So two questions. When they talk about doing topographical ground survey at each location. Yet we don't have a specified location at this point, I know of. So there should be some conversation before they go start
Yeah,
checking
okay.
in the ground to say, is this acceptable to both West Newbury and Haverhill?
Yeah, that's good.
And my second question is Haverhill on board at this point? I know they were beginning to.
So, I mean, I can't speak to that. What I can tell you is that Mayor Barrett has been part of some of the conversations, including a very big meeting that took place back in August. She and her chief of staff were there. She is supportive, very, very supportive. Subject to, and I put this in the memo, you know, subject to design, and, you know, so for instance, the couple of objectives she had articulated were both the design of the actual like crossbar and something that's both in color and design, like aesthetically pleasing. Obviously, we're gonna have the same interest, maybe a different design, but the same kind of objective.
That's good.
And the second was on the entrance, as you know, it's just kind of chain link fence. She talked about, could there be a more like more attractive fencing? The state, it was very receptive to that, and I think we'll be incorporating that. So, you know, she's supportive, subject to it being what they want. And that's speaking from the mayor's office. It has not
It's an
gone.
historic district.
Yes, it's gonna need to go through the historic district commission, and I'm not sure if the city council has a role or how that goes in Haverhill, but she is supportive, provided it meets their expectations, but I know she was rightly cautious back at the meeting in the late summer, early fall. she wasn't purporting to speak for the Rocks Village Historic District Commission. That's its own entity that will, once there's something specific to review, we'll need to do that.
As far as the state is concerned too, we don't have to march in lockstep with Haverhill.
No.
So if Haverhill gets delayed because of historic issues, there's no reason not to address it on this side of the river at this point.
I think you're exactly right, yeah.
Well, though, if they have one contractor doing the geotechnical stuff, probably more cost effective to do it all at the same time, right?
Probably.
I'm just saying,
It'd be a lot more cost effective if no more trucks hit the bridge coming from West Newbury.
that's not right. Well, that's good. I mean, I was thinking about this a couple weeks ago. I wonder what's happening with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
And then I included, there's a press release, or we put something out on the, Facebook and town website, yesterday, we received from the agricultural committee. It was really intended to kind of communicate the, town meeting approval of the bylaw last spring. So I wanted to put this in for kind of informational update, but I think, kind of the process, is probably something we should talk through when a committee does initiate that kind of outward communication. How do we want to have that handled in the future?
I think it needs to go by the town manager. I mean, that's fine.
Well, and perhaps by the board, I'm not sure.
Yeah, what do you think, Chris? About the process?
I think one of the two. But this needs to have a full look, whatever it is. If Angus is busy, I don't know if it needs to be before the board, but whatever gets posted on the website is representing the town endorses it, so. Boards and committees can't just say, I post this and throw it up without any regard for it. But I guess based on the comments I have later, I think it would have been helpful if it came to the board.
Ask comments on this particular one?
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about that now? I don't think.
Well, if you want to get through the process first, it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at our policies. I was thinking there is a policy about publicity that has to be approved by the town manager's office, but I mean, does this fall in that category? I don't know. It's a little bit different than like events that people want to publicize.
It's publicity on the town, no.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding is this is intended to just inform residents and people that the bylaw had been passed and what's in it.
It's not accurate, it's biased. So.
Okay. How do you really feel? Well, so tell me, I mean, I reviewed it, I changed it quite a bit from what was presented to Angus. But if I missed something, we should talk about it. And there was some emails today of people that did not understand the bylaw and are pretty upset about it, so if there's something misleading here, I think we should address it.
Yeah, the first thing is that it is trying to imply that the bylaw is for commercial farm operations in town. Hobby farmers are not protected and aren't afforded the same rights as commercial farmers. So in your second paragraph, the right to farm bylaw affirms the rights of farmers. No, it affirms the rights of commercial farmers to operate in the woods. That should be in there.
Okay.
Because then down below, they kind of tickle you again, talking about rural character supporting both large and small scale farms. Well, that's an editorial.
Well, that's in the bylaw.
Right, but when you tie the two together, it's trying to imply that these rights are on small hobby farms, but they're not. And then I think the biggest problem is the protection of rights. Says the bylaw provides assistance from the Ag Committee to farmers facing nuisance complaints regarding normal legal farm activities. No, it does not. The Board of Health addresses it, and at their discretion, they can request of this committee to assist them, so.
So, do you have other things that you're concerned about?
Well, again, the paragraph that says this bylaw applies to all types of commercial agriculture. It recognizes small hobby farming. Those should be two separate sentences. Again, by putting together in one sentence, it's just trying to blur the lines of who's afforded these protections.
So, I mean, that sentence could just be struck, right?
That'd be preferable, but, I mean.
Well, I mean, it's on the tab, has this been sent to the press? I mean.
No.
Okay, so, I mean, do you wanna try to address these? Well, I guess this is not really an agenda.
Well, I didn't know if that was it, yeah, it was just a notice, I just don't think it represents a position that I would support as to how it ties in with the bylaw.
So what if we removed it from the town website and put it on our next agenda to discuss? Is that? Angus, is that, reasonable?
I'm fine with that. When you say next agenda, do you mean next regular meeting in 2 weeks, or as you know, there's a special meeting next Wednesday with the FinCom?
Yeah, I think our next meeting.
So
I
next
mean, there's no
Wednesday.
urgency with this, right?
Other than the fact that it's already been put out, so I think if you were gonna change it, probably doing so next week rather than a couple of weeks out might make sense.
Okay,
I don't know if you're available to, we haven't posted that meeting yet, the posting deadline's not until Monday, so
mhm.
we could post select board to start a few minutes ahead of the joint meeting. And if there's
Okay.
this or other business that you wanna
Yeah.
take up.
What do you think about that, Chris?
That's fine.
So in general. So how would you describe the types of things that you wanna see versus? You know, like the town manager's office, or is it a case by case?
If Angus has the time to review them,
Mhm.
that's fine, I trust that what he puts out there represents what
Okay,
the town's doing.
okay. All right, so if you could do that. you could get it off the
Good,
website.
yeah, we'll do those.
Is it on Facebook as well?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Next, it's just general updates. There's quite a lot going on, but I don't have any specific updates unless there's any questions that you have.
No, Chris? Okay. Moving on to action items, the first item is a vote to provide notice to town clerk board registrars regarding the process to fill the select board seat. This is due to, the resignation of Ross Capiloupo. So I guess this has been refined since the agenda was posted and we don't need to vote. Do you want to just summarize the process, Angus?
Or you want me to, or do you want to? Or
I don't mind.
why don't I
Sure, yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong? So basically, if this resignation had been further away from a regular election, the select board would have needed to vote notice to the town clerk to hold a special election. But because the effective date of the resignation is within 100 days of a regular election, the balance of Ross's term, the remaining 2 years of his term, would, in the normal course of things, be put onto the ballot for the May 2026 election. So Amanda would already have been doing that, so no vote is needed.
Mhm.
The one thing we did want to confirm with town council, and Amanda has confirmed, is that the timelines for the availability of papers for people to take out and return papers are proper. That people have, with the notice that's been provided, people have been given notice that there's now 2 seats on the ballot. We want to do more on that. We want to do more with the website and social media to bring more attention to that, so that anyone who's interested in potentially taking out papers has time to do that. March 13th is the deadline to take out papers. March 16th is the deadline to return them. So we want to make sure that everybody in town knows that, and I think, we'll do more with website and social media, whatever you can do in your communications to just help get that word out. But long story short, it's already going to be on the ballot, and there is no need for the board to take a particular vote. But when we posted the agenda, we had a shadow of a doubt, and
Yeah.
we didn't want to potentially miss a procedural step.
Okay, so my question is the 15 days between, is it the notice when the date he resigned or his effective date? Because if it's today, then there's not 15 days before papers can be taken out.
So that. Well, that 15 days only, he was resigned as of March 1st.
But I don't know, he gave his notice on February 12th, so that's what I wasn't clear about, but Tim looked at the
Tim had
schedule.
confirmed it, I sent him all
Okay.
the different nomination paper deadline dates, and he said that that complies.
Good.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So item B is a review of the comments that we've received from town entities regarding a notice of intent to remove 4.28 acres at 125 River Road from chapter 61 designation. And the point of this discussion is whether the town should exercise its right of first refusal on this property. So it looks like we received feedback from Concom, Open Space, Planning Board. And that's it, right?
That's the sense.
Assessors,
Okay.
and I didn't include it in the packet because it wasn't really substantive, but I did get, responses from, we got responses from every town entity acknowledging receipt.
Okay.
So I didn't put that in tonight's packet because I think we'd already shared that, but within that, the water superintendent back when we sent late January, it got back to me and said, does he need to put this to the board? And I said, this is the process, and if they want to provide comments, they would need to take that up. They didn't provide comments.
Okay. So all of them said they don't recommend that.
Correct, yes, every comment, there was no town entity that recommended it in favor of exercising a right of first refusal.
Any further discussion on this, Jess?
You need a motion to have you just sign off for the select board?
Yeah, I just wondered if you had any further comments on it.
No, I think for the previous meeting, we discussed it, and we couldn't find the value.
So the vote, the language of the vote, Angus?
I think it would be simply to
Waive our right.
waive the right to right of first refusal. There's a form in here that would need to be signed and returned.
Make a motion on the right.
Yeah, the notice of waiver of first refusal applicant, it's page 38 of the packet.
Make a motion on the right, the chair to sign the waiver of first refusal option for the 125 River Road. Jeff received the removal.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Item C is a request to reallocate ARPA funds from the town. So do you want to explain the background on the things? I was kind of taken aback when I first saw it, because I thought we had already expended all the funds. But
Right, now we haven't expended, they were all placed under contract by the end of calendar year 2024, as had been required. And one of the projects that the board had authorized funding for, one of them had a small kind of surplus balance or turn back. Right. And the other was the fire gear that, due to, I gather, supply chain issues, didn't come to pass, and that funding that was authorized by the board did not end up getting spent. So the specifics of that, so in the paid school temporary shoring, there was $547.75 that was appropriated that did not end up being needed. And then on the personal protective firefighting gear, the full amount that was appropriated, the $19,370.79 for 5 sets of personal protective firefighting gear, had been authorized by the board, but had not been expended. So basically, because the Middle Street Bridge construction was under contract as of December 31st of 2024, it is, Jenny's confirmed it's okay for the board to reauthorize it.
We made the motion at the time to any unexpended funds from the ARPA could be put towards the Middle Street Bridge.
Right.
I know we're very careful about
Yeah,
that.
right, so it's kind of an accounting housekeeping item, I think, yeah, I was a little surprised on the firefighting gear as well. Jenny's been more working directly with Dwyer on that, so I don't know that exactly how, why that didn't work out, but obviously the funds were appropriated some time ago. It would have been in 2024, so.
And then that obviously reduces the town's obligation, the same amount we'd have to fund, right?
For the bridge, correct, yeah.
So the budget increase shown for the Middle Street Bridge, that's not the actual amount, it's just the
No.
sum of the other two. The sum of what we're turning or transferring over.
Correct, it's
It's going towards the. budget.
yeah, it's really an appropriation increase, I think is a more better way to put it, probably.
Right, any questions?
Need to vote it?
Yes.
Make a motion to reallocate the ARPA funds from the Page School temporary shoring, and the firefighting protective gear, total sum of $19,918.54 to Middle Street Bridge.
Construction.
Okay.
All right, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item D is a request for renewal of health insurance opt-out program for FY 27-29 by Caitlin Gilbert, treasurer collector.
Comment, we want to, deal with Linda where she's online. The, other issue,
Sure.
because that could take a little bit more time than one
Okay,
until later.
okay. Fair enough. We'll move on to item E, which is to review the OPEB contribution analysis if the town was to increase its contribution towards retiree health insurance. And Linda,
Good evening, everybody.
Hi there.
How's it going? My name is Linda Bourneval, as noted in the minutes. Tell me how you'd like to format this give and take, talking about this stuff. Talk a little bit about OPEB and what it is and what it isn't.
well, it sounds like there are two options and you're looking for feedback from us on which option to model, correct?
Okay.
So do you want to describe those two options and?
Sure, no problem. Well, full disclosure, we modeled them both.
Okay,
So I just want to explain though, because there'll be some kind of decisions that you'll need to think about and make on how you may want to move forward. So so we did the study. We developed additional liabilities under the 3 alternate contribution scenarios. So baseline is 50% contributions currently made by the town on behalf of the retiree premiums. So we modeled that 50% increasing in 5% increments up to 65%. So we did that, I believe it was a little over a year ago that we provided a study for this. That was in between, and I'll have to give you a little bit of background on this. When we do OPEB work, the valuation and the modeling occurs technically every other year. And what happens in that off year is just like a roll forward of our numbers. So we were doing that study last year during a roll forward year. So the data gets kind of stale after a little bit. So we've now updated and we've done a full valuation. So we recommended updating this study using the new data, which makes complete sense because we're now, you know, a much more current on what this data is, all of your medical offerings and all that. So that was one of the things that we definitely did. So we do have some liabilities that will need, you know, it's the differential between the 50% contribution scenario and the other 3 scenarios. If you'd like, I can share the screen if that's helpful on what we're kind of looking at here in terms of impact. If that, or would you rather me just kind of,
Let me make you the host, Linda. I
okay,
just will emphasize that make sure that before you leave the meeting, I reclaim host.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you leave the meeting.
Okay, totally get that.
Good, great, thank you.
Just you'll get it, somebody else is gonna have to remind me as well. But anyways, all right, so let me share my screen
And
here.
while she's setting that up, I'm just gonna give just a little bit more background because there's kind of a division of labor between the work that we've engaged Linda's team to do and what we've been working on at a staff level. We've been looking at kind of what would be the near-term budget impacts, and that's what kind of my memo gets into and prior analysis that was done. She's looking more long-term, OPEB kind of funding that trust to the degree that you have been. So that's kind of the division of labor generally.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. I did notice in your minutes, I think in one of your exhibits, you actually had put out that grid, right, of what the cost would be annually to increase this contribution on behalf of the town. So
Yeah.
what we're looking at, don't look at this, this is my memo, but currently what you guys are doing, you are funding to an OPEB trust. And the theory behind that is you've created a trust where you're setting aside money to pre-fund these benefits. You're technically not using that trust fund yet. You could be, but you aren't. So in other words, you could continue to make some contributions to that trust and then pull money out of the trust to pay these benefits, right? Pay the town's portion of the retiree premium. All right, so what you're doing right now is so you got to keep this in mind as we look through this analysis. When we talk about making contributions to the trust or even making contributions, remember the piece the town is already paying for. That is a contribution, right? You just are paying it out of your general fund. But accountants kind of think about this as you really did put that into the trust, but you immediately took it out. All right. So when we talk about making contributions of $25,500, you're making a lot more than that, right? You're paying out the whole town's portion of the retiree premium. So keep that in mind when we're talking about dollars here being spent.
Is that clear to everyone?
Yeah, so the table that you have in your memo, that's not annual, that's monthly, right?
The memo was just to look at the per employee
Right,
for,
but that's monthly?
no, this is annual,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
All right, so what is the town doing right now? The town has in the budget, and I'm not sure how long this budget item is projected to stay this way, but currently you have budgeted $25,500 a year to go into your OPEB trust. So
And if I
that,
can interrupt very briefly, as you guys know, that's not in the operating budget, that's an annual article, that's a separate appropriation. And so Linda, what they've been doing, or what town meeting's been doing at the board's recommendation, is transferring from free cash that 25.5, so it's not actually in the operating budget. It's a separate vote from the voters every spring.
okay, so that amount could fluctuate, right, depending on that free cash. In our projections for the
It's based on a
OPEB,
model. Yep.
Yeah, so Linda, that's based on a model that our town accountant and somebody from the,
And with her team.
so
Yeah.
it doesn't fluctuate, we've already forecast out, right?
It's, but it could.
okay, so 25.5 is a good starting point for today and going forward. So
Okay.
that's what we modeled. Thank you, because that's what we actually modeled, but you know, we can do something different. So what we did is we said, all right, I think on Angus's request was, you know, we're about 90% funded right now, which means you're pretty close to getting fully funded under the baseline. Remember, baseline is that 50% town contribution rate. We projected that if you did continue contributing your 25.5, in 17 years, you would hit 100% funded. So that's where we say, this is kind of where you are at, right? That's your baseline model. Continuing to contribute 25,500 a year. Remember those benefits you're still also paying. That's probably in a budget item. That's different. That's going to go up. Nobody thinks healthcare ever reduces in a year unless you wholly modify the benefits being offered. So we are modeling increasing in benefit payments as well based on medical trend rates and all of that. So again, the 25.5 goes into the trust. It earns a return based on your investment policy and all of that. And so we're projecting out that based on your 50% contribution rate, your 17 years of that 25.5 would get you 100% funded. So then what we did is said, all right, under the same model, 25.5 a year, 17 years, what would happen if we now change these contribution percentages, right? Where will you land? So I'm gonna flip here on page 4 of our, and I haven't even sent this out yet because we literally were like reviewing it this afternoon. And I want probably somebody to take another set of eyes on my writing. So what we have here is, again, this 25.5 concept of that is not changing. So if you look across the baseline 50% rate, you know, you're getting fully funded by year 17, and even in year 30, you're now like in surplus if you kept doing that. But if you then change, and our scenarios are 55%, 60, and 65, that's the A, B, and C, you can see how the funded ratio, and by the way, funded ratio for the non-actuaries in the room are your assets divided by, assets you've set aside divided by the liability that you're trying to fund. Or the liability is literally the present value of all the future benefits you're expecting to pay. Current retirees, as long as they live, future retirees, it's the whole group. All right, so that's your funded ratio, i.e., I mean, I said you were close to 90% funded. That's baseline 50%, year one, we have an 89 there, close enough to 90. So you're currently 90%. We are projecting that in 15 years, you're gonna be 99%. And I said in 17 years, you'll be 100% funded. And again, that can grow its surplus into surplus. But if you change that contribution rate in scenario A, you can see how the funded ratio is going to drop. And in 20 years, you know, instead of, I think you have about a $400,000 unfunded liability right now, it's going to grow to about 2.3 million in 20 years. So this kind of illustrates that if you do nothing with that 25.5, but you modify the town's contribution percentage, you will move well out of full funding. And this kind of can show you how that kind of trends.
That being enlarged, I can't see anything there.
Sure, let me see if, oops. I need to move this thing. There we go. Hold on. Does that help?
We're not seeing any, we're just seeing, it looks like the scenario A tab is all that's showing.
You're not seeing Town of West Newbury other post-benefit program? That is weird.
No, we're seeing the file, but it's kind of static. It hasn't moved at all since you started talking. And it's just showing a single tab, the scenario A tab.
I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna reshare. How about that?
Great.
I have so many things open. Sorry that I'm trying. Here, give me a moment.
Do you know if the model, the 25.5 model, does that account for increase in healthcare costs?
Yes,
It does.
yep, that was developed with, yeah.
Yeah, so our model follows exactly what we do for the OPEB, you know, regular valuation work. We assume people get older, we assume people retire in the future, and we assume that current health costs are going to increase every year in the future. All right, let's try this again. I'm like covering you with, try sharing you on a different screen. Do you see?
Oh, now we're seeing, okay, this is, yeah.
This
we
is
were
what I
seeing-
was trying to tell you. Sorry about that.
Oh, we were seeing an Excel file.
Yeah, and that's what I have open on this screen, but it wasn't like, I'm gonna close it. It wasn't putting itself. All right, so you see this chart and this graph, right? So
Right,
as you
yeah.
can see, do you see that?
We do. I'm zooming it in on my end, but it might be better if you zoom it in on your ends.
Is that better?
Is that,
Yes, that's
is
good.
that okay for you guys?
And I'll just kind of move. I mean, the graph is basically the same as exactly what's here in the table, which kind of is telling. So as I was saying, the baseline, this is where you currently are at, this 89%, 90-ish. Year one, you're contributing 50%. You've got 90% of the liability currently set aside in assets. You will in 17 years, that will grow to 100%. It seems like it takes a long time, right? But think about, you know, this isn't exactly like a mortgage. It's not a fixed dollar amount that you're funding for. It's a dollar amount that keeps growing because you've got more benefits next year to fund in the year after for all your active employees. So It sort of is this projection that kind of grows. So it takes a bit of time to get there. But 17 years is the model, what we're showing in the model, and that even in 30 years, you're going to have a little bit of surplus there. But as you increase the town's contribution, and keep that $25,500 contribution steady, you're starting already at a more liability currently, even today. You're not throwing in all of the growth, all of the increase in the liability in the trust today. You're probably going to fund that over time. So what ends up happening immediately is that your liabilities go up, assets do not. So now you're only 77% funded. You're not going to get there even in 30 years.
At the 25.5, yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of the, I don't think you needed me to tell you that, if you increase benefits but don't pay more toward them, you're not going to get there, right? So, here's sort of that analysis of that fixed contribution. And that was what I was calling option 1 in my email, that we can tell you what this contribution could be if you wanted to stay exactly the same. Now, 17 years is not a long time in an actuarial world of pre-funding things, right? Your town is going to be around for a while, and you're likely going to offer these benefits for a while. And I mean, for a while, in my opinion, means like infinity. Like, I don't see any of our towns going away unless something comes that says we're no longer offering this benefit. But today's thinking, reality is the town is here, the benefit is here. There's going to be new people coming in every year. Folks are going to retire. It's an ongoing system, right? So 17 years really is not that long a period to want to fund it. So what we also offered, and there's a couple things here too. Our option 2, which is this one, is what's called an actuarially determined contribution. And this is taking that unfunded liability, and instead of a fixed dollar amount, you amortize it. And you know what? Now that I'm looking at this and talking about, remember I said your contributions are not only what you might put aside at the trust, they also include what you're funding for your retirees right now. This is the sum of those two. I might update this. Yeah, I told you I didn't have it fully reviewed. We may update it we know you're going to pay those contributions no matter what on behalf of your retirees. This is in addition, what do you also want to put in the trust to fund it? All right. It's a 30-year amortization. Under every scenario, it gets fully funded in 30 years. So this is a little bit opposite. We got our date, 30, what contributions are needed. And again, 500, I'm trying to think, you guys are around 200,000, is that? Let me go back to your report. Angus, you actually had the monthlies per person. Do you have approximately, I'm forgetting right now, what you pay annually for your retirees? I can open up the report and we can get that.
Yeah,
Still
it's,
52 times 0.9. maybe.
let's see. It's about 133,000.
That sounds about right. Yep. And that from our perspective, that's what you're going to fund this year, but that's going to go up every year. Why? You're going to have health insurance that's going up. You're going to have, people are going to retire. Retirees are going to be collecting. People are living longer, right? So all of that compounding is going to put more in the retiree payment column. So that goes up. So that's why some of these go up because of that. So, that is sort of the other idea of the model, that you can say, instead of a fixed dollar amount, we can fund under an actuarially determined contribution amount. Full disclosure, not many entities do that. It's a little risky because you are at the mercy of health insurance costs, and these things will fluctuate. Every time we do a new valuation, we update it with new premium information. As you very likely know, that's a very volatile world. You know, as you get your renewals every year on what your insurance costs are going to be. So funding an actuarially determined contribution is going to take in all of that information and reset every 2 years because we're going to get new health insurance premiums. So this one could be a little more, you know, like I said, a little riskier, but it gives you some relativity on what the differentials are under each of the scenarios to kind of, you know, chew on what's affordable.
I think it would be helpful to express that option the same way as the first option is, which is just the additional.
The trust
Online.
dollars, yeah, and this first option really doesn't tell you anything about what's, I mean, we know it's 25.5 going into the trust. What you're paying outside doesn't, it comes into this model because liabilities build on what you're paying right now. Right, so that's part of how we come up with the funded ratio, but I'm gonna note here that this 209,000, this is in our report, actually. I'm gonna open our report real quickly, our valuation report. So what we did here is exactly what we do every year in your report, and that is to show you if we, and this will be a good sort of review of, here we are. Okay, so this is the actuarially determined employer contribution, ADEC for short, if you've heard the term ARC.
Oh, yeah, we're not seeing, this other, we're still
Why
seeing
does this keep happening? You're seeing my like folder here, I bet, right?
no, we're seeing the initial memo that you opened up.
This is why I hate Zoom, because Zoom doesn't let you move something. You've got here we go. I think you have to reshare every time you try to,
I think you do have to reshare each time, yeah.
yeah. Do you see
Now
that now?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna make it bigger so we all can see it. But this is the actuarially determined employer contribution, ADEC for short. Back in the old days, under GASB 45, they called it the ARC. So that's been a term that's been floating around. This is exactly the same number. They just renamed it. So what we do every year is we calculate this thing in row 5, the actuarially determined employer contribution, the ADEC. That's the 209,708. Remember, we saw that on the other exhibit. That is like if you put everything in the trust, but then you made your benefit payments, you took them out of the trust. Right? So you're putting in the whole enchilada.
but we're paying our benefit payments out of the operating budget.
Yeah, out of your general fund. So let's go back to 25. We calculated a very similar number back in 25, and you can see like the difference between a roll forward valuation and new premiums. We were calculating a little over $175,000. We were expecting you were gonna be funding 113,000 anyway. So if I take my calculator and take the 176 minus the 112, 64,000 is what we'd say. If you want to fully fund this under like an actuarial model, you'd be funding $64,000.
For this
You can-
year.
Yeah, not really, because things go up every year, so it's kind of there would be a model that you would see. It would look kind of like this, but it would have 30 years of the numbers for you to see how they grow. But every other year or every year, we would update that and show you how you know, your earnings on your trusts might be better than what we assume. So that's a good thing for actuarial funding. Or the health insurance premiums next time we do evaluation might be lower than we anticipated. Those kind of good experience gains would reduce your ADEC. But conversely, your investments in the trust might not earn the assumed return, which is 5.8, right? Or experience, you know, retirees might be living longer than we think, or the health insurance premiums went up more than we thought. Those would create losses, which would mean your ADEC would increase. So you can kind of tell here, row 8 last year. We have a TBD here because we don't really know yet what you're contributing. I mean, you told us, but we want to see proof in 2026. But in 25, we absolutely knew you contributed 25.5. Total benefit payments were like 113,000. So in grand total, we know you contributed on behalf of this program 138,000. But if you were funding a true Act ADEC, it would have been 176, this number that would have been needed. So you're not far off. You're really not that far off from what your, intention to fully fund this program. So that's sort of what an actuarial approach to a funding model. You guys are part of Essex Regional Retirement Rate. So the statute under funding for pensions is this kinda, I'm gonna say kinda, it's not exactly, but it's sort of the same concept of there's a couple pieces you're paying for an amortization of an unfunded liability. That's number 2 and 3 coming up with this unfunded. I mean, you're so close to fully funded, you hardly pay anything. You really don't need a lot for that. What you have to pay for though every year is new benefits earned by your employees. Right? Like we don't know that Joe Smith's going to work another year, so we're funding just 1 year of his benefit at this point, and every year in the future. That's the number one piece. Right now for you guys, because you are so well funded, that piece is going to be bigger. Most other communities, that number in number 2 is huge, like 1% funded. You guys are 90% funded, a very enviable place to be in because many other entities, I think Massachusetts average is under 10% funded in these programs.
Okay. Chris, do you have questions or thoughts about which model?
Could you go back, Linda, please, to the other report? Because I think one thing that I think came through clearly in one of the emails you sent, but I don't think was stated clearly tonight. I just want to make sure it's clear for everyone in the room that you were talking about if with an increase in contribution percentage that there was a revised amount that 25.5, I think you were up around like more like 79K a year. So can you delve into that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So that's going to be our option 1, right? So we said 25.5, and right before I got on the call, I was like, oh, wait, I know what they're going to ask me. They're going to ask me like, what would be required to kind of stay exactly in this baseline trajectory, which again is kind of aggressive. It doesn't need to be 17 years, but if it was, your scenario A, that 25.5 would need to go up to about $100,000 a year. And again, I think it's because that 17 period is short.
Is that at, I'm sorry, you might have said that. Was that at 55, 60, or 65?
That's scenario A, the 55%.
At 55%.
Yep. The scenario B was 106. I can tell you, the net. You'd need to fund an additional, and scenario A, the 55%, an additional 75,000. So we're talking close to 100,000 there. Scenario B, you'd need to be funding 160,000. And scenario C, a year. And scenario C,
Additional or inclusive of the 25.5?
No, I think
160 flat. Yeah, 160, an additional 135,000.
Yeah.
And scenario C, 220 or an additional 100. Do I do my math right? I don't think I did my math right. Hold on. 195 extra. I'm going to add that to our report, by the way, because I kind of was like, shoots, I forgot to put it in there. But I think that's important. But again, that's at 17 years. I would probably want to think about, what's a more reasonable time frame. I know, it's hard to say we have this benefit, we can be fully funded in 17 years if we do nothing. That's great. But then to say, well, we'd like to increase the benefit, does it really need to be fully funded in 17 years? These are I'm going to call it the most, I don't know, is it conservative? Like 17 years? Like you'd have to pony up a lot more money under any of these scenarios to kind of, to make the baseline row, to make all these other rows look like the baseline row.
But for us to assess what it's gonna cost, we have to hold that 17 years so we can see what the cost is at each of the percentage increases. Does that stay static as we go forward? The numbers you gave us, the 100, the 116, the 220?
If it's 17, if 17 is, what you are
Let's assume
gonna,
that.
like, if that's your goal to be, done in 17, well, I'm gonna total actuarial caveat here. When we do this again in 2 years, these numbers are all gonna be different. Because your trust is not gonna earn 5.8 over the next 2 years exactly. Or, as I was saying, your health insurance costs could be different than we modeled. Because this model is based on the most recent health insurance rates we had, right? Which we know are gonna change. So you can kind of, keep a range. I mean, you don't need to like fund it exactly. You could create a range. Maybe it's the range of the 20 to 25 year full funding date. That's another possibility. Just backtrack on, I mentioned Essex Regional. Essex Regional is subject to Chapter 32 of Mass General Laws. There are requirements to fund, right? They don't have a choice. You don't have a choice on whether or not you're going to write the check to them. Under OPEB, there is no state law. Nothing requires pre-funding, which is why the average, funded ratio is 10%, where there's many communities that don't fund at all. So you can kind of build your own model, really. You can develop your own funding policy. You can kind of say, hey, when we become 100% funded, what are we going to do? Because you certainly aren't going to keep wanting to fund, right? Or you might fund some different portion of this thing. So there's a lot of different ways. This right now perhaps can help you decide how that contribution, percentage might change in the short term.
Do you remember where the 17 years came from?
The 17, yeah, I mean, we modeled that if you
But
fund,
based on what? Why did you choose 17 versus 20 or 30? Was that must have come from somebody at the town?
no, the 25, we built a model that said if you contribute, you have $3.5 million in the bank right now. And if you contribute 25.5 a year for the next 17 years, your this program will become fully funded.
Right, but why 17 years? You're saying now that's aggressive.
Because it's kind of what the model projected. We gave your $3.5 million, 5.8 interest for 1 year. We put in 25.5, gave that interest the next year. We kept building on that. And it's the answer that emerged from our model, I guess is the best way for me to say it. You know what I'm saying? Like if say, let's change an assumption. If say instead of the almost 6% return, we said, no, your assets are gonna get 10%. That 17 is gonna be a lot shorter because your assets are gonna earn more. That was the year, that was the unknown of the model at this point on when your current assets plus $25,500 paid annually would project out to a certain dollar amount that we need to make your liabilities equal your assets. It happened at year 17. In other words, if
You have two
15,
variables.
sorry, say that again.
So you have two variables, the 25.5 and the 17 years, like.
We didn't make 25.5 a variable though. You told us that. And so that
Okay,
was,
that's what I'm trying to get at, like where those inputs came for your model. And so that came from the town. So was that the model Rob and Jenny worked on and come up with the?
No, theirs was entirely the pension liability.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the OPEB. So back when I started, the town had achieved, it wasn't strictly 100%, but it was like 96%. It was very close to 100%, and it was kind of talked about multiple audits as fully funded because it was kind of close enough, and we were in the top 5 or 10 communities in the state out of 351 cities and towns in terms of our percentage funded. So it's always been the direction that I've been given since I've been here, is to kind of keep pace with that. And so every year we've looked at the OPEB amount, and we've always relied on the reports we've got from KMS, and we've kind of picked an amount. I worked with the town accountant and then present that to the board of the FinCom. I think it was probably, and if Jenny was here, she could tell me exactly, but I think it was about 3 years ago, probably since you've been on the board, that it was more like, well, what is the amount that's going to be kind of the stable amount year in, year out? That's when some work was done, and it resulted in this 25.5 amount.
Right.
So I think maybe at that point, they may have been given a 20-year time horizon, so now we're at 17 because I'm just speculating, but Jenny would know that, but it was basically direction of, you know, what's the amount that's gonna be that stabilized amount to get to fully funded.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So to answer your question on like the variables, right? So you kind of can have in this sort of one unknown. And our unknown going into this was, what year are they going to become fully funded by contributing 25.5 a year, right? So that was what we solved for. We solved for that it would take 17 years. So we kept that 17 constant from that point on for the rest of the scenarios, which is what I was saying. It's I think a little more aggressive than you need to be. If you wanted some flexibility, we could say those numbers I threw out, the 100,000, the 160 and the 220, that's at 17 years. We could maybe do that at 25 years, and that might be more palatable. Again, keeping in mind that every valuation creates new results. And you can kind of see that in our valuation reports where there's gains and losses all the time. As I was mentioning, people are living longer or dying before we thought they would. That would create a gain, right? The assets could return more or less. There's always reasons why. We might change assumptions. We might say, we don't like the assumption of people retiring at a particular age, so we'll change that. And in OPEB, if people retire too early, that's very expensive, right? If somebody retires at 45, say, on pensions, they're going to get a reduced pension. In OPEB, there really isn't such a thing as reduced OPEB. It's OPEB. So at 45 for 20 years, they're going to be under your active health insurance plans. That's a very expensive component. Those are the kind of things we don't anticipate fully. We don't anticipate that a police officer might become disabled and retire quite young, go on OPEB. Would create a huge loss, which would change this model pretty dramatically. So we call it, there's some of those things that we don't assume these things are going to happen with very high probability, but when they do, they can have pretty high impact on a model. So that's why, like, if we had something like this and you came up with a funding model that you'd like, we do update it with every single valuation that we do, so that you can either say, you know what, if we're like within 10% of the contribution that we thought we'd make and your model updated it within 10%, you could just skip it and say, yep, fine, we're still on track. But maybe if that thing starts diverging away from your intentions, then we would revisit the model. And like I said, these can all be modified anytime because there's no statute requiring there's no mandatory contributions to these programs, except once you adopt the provision of Chapter 32B, you've got to fund the retirees, the town's portion, right, of the retirement, of the retiree medical bill, but you don't need to set aside. And this is the set aside conversation, right, on what you think you should be putting in there.
This may be a little too far afield or a little too big picture for where we're trying to get tonight, but Linda, I think if you can give just a brief thumbnail of kind of the sea change event of, I think it was about a decade ago, right around 2015 or so, when the GASB when towns and cities across the country were now expected to carry this liability on their books and their audit. That was really when this became something that every city and town became focused on to some degree. And bond rating agencies became very focused on, because all of a sudden you had to actually carry this on your books. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. From way back, there was an article, might have been Standard and Poor's, one of the rating agencies, I think, wrote it was, Gatsby, you dropped a bomb on me, and that was absolutely correct. Prior to these disclosures that are required under what's called Gatsby 74 and 75, was Gatsby 45. And 45 was I'm going to call it a lame attempt by the Gatsby to sort of get this concept across that OPEB was a lot like a pension benefit. It was this concept of deferred comp, right? You're making a promise to an employee who's rendering services for you right now that you're going to funds or you're going to pay for something when he retires. And retirement, that was a very easy concept to wrap your head around. But then the Gatsby said, no. We also think retiree medical kind of falls in that realm as well. So Gatsby 45 emerged. It was this kind of okay, but it got a lot of people in towns to say, what's an actuary? Like, I need one? Like, what is it? And, we kind of started doing these valuations under Gatsby 45. Pension reform, Gatsby reformed the pension disclosures in 2014 to now say, okay, not only are you going to calculate these liabilities, and by the way, on pensions, many of them are required statutorily, but your net pension liability, that's liabilities minus assets, are going to land on your balance sheet. And there's also an expense component that this is how you're going to do it, and that's going to land on your P&L. I'm sure every year from Essex Regional, you get some big report or small report, whatever it is, that says, here's West Newbury's portion of the proportionate share, is the title, of their net pension liability. They didn't stop there, the Gatsby. They said, okay, 67, 68, they crossed that off. They changed it to 74, 75, wherever's the word pension, they changed it to OPEB. Basically the same exact concept that your net OPEB liability would be recorded on the town's balance sheet, and an expense calculation would also be entered on the P&L. That probably put every city and town in America in the red on their balance sheet, because these liabilities can be large. They're probably larger than pension liabilities. One, really because they haven't been funded as robustly as pension liabilities. So in Massachusetts, I'm guessing, I bet the average funded ratio of the pension systems are probably 70 to 75%. And I already mentioned OPEB is like under 10. So lots of liabilities to record on balance sheets. And it really kind of made many, and I think Angus mentioned this, like put sort of this on people's radar, that how can we reduce this liability? It put it on the rating agency's radar, of course. And that, I call the rating agencies, I kind of equate them to the IRS. Like sometimes you're not quite sure what they're thinking or what they would do with certain information. But it's pretty well known, I believe, that if we prepared, Gatsby disclosures for somebody, and they basically said, thank you very much, handed it to their auditors. The auditors put, zero assets and the liability, and they're basically doing nothing to address the liability that might impact their rating. So conversely, the towns and cities that do something, and doing something, it's not just for the rating agencies, you actually get a better discount rate when you're pre-funding. Because you've got assets set aside that are working for you, right? They're in an investment. They are probably not in just a general fund. They are in equities and other alternate investments that will return, on average, a very nice, piece of money to fund these benefits. And that's sort of the whole point, is to be able to fund the benefits at some time when they become, when the trust becomes big enough to start drawing from it. So that's kind of the goal, to be able to use that. And another kind of interesting statistic in the pension world, this is nationwide, over 60% of every pension dollar, so 60 cents of every pension dollar is paid with investment return of the trust, not raised and appropriated taxes. So the idea is at some point you want to be able to use this trust fund, and wouldn't that be nice that you don't have to raise and appropriate every dollar that you need to fund your 50 or 55 or 60% piece, you'd be able to use this trust. So that's sort of the little history of where the GASB came in and kind of, I think, nudged everybody a little bit to seriously focus on these liabilities.
Okay. Chris, do you have questions? Because you.
More of a comment than anything, but my takeaway on this, and I think I'm correct, and hopefully you'll correct me if I'm wrong. But if we go to 55%, that adds 74.5 a year, 17 years, that's 1.26 million. If we do 60%, that's 134.5 a year, which nets out at 2.86 million. And 65% is 194,000 a year, times the 17 years is 3.3 million. So that's the cost impact.
Yeah.
So then I think what we have to then do is distill that down and say, and those are the added costs, that's not what we're already doing. Then we have to sit there and, as a board, say, what does that do with our tax rate? Throwing $200,000 into the budget's gonna have an impact.
Well, and I think that's certainly a really good point. I think one thing is, to this point, the town has always been able to make its OPEB contribution very comfortably from free cash. But that's when we're contributing a fairly small amount of 25.5 a year. If the contributions went into the six figures or 200,000 or 165 or even 100, that becomes a bigger hit on free cash, and I don't know that we can. It's
Not 200,000 a year, that's kind of.
No, yeah, you're gonna draw down your free cash and not have the ability to either use free cash to fund all of the things with funds or offset the tax rate or other things.
And that's based on the 17 years, because that's the model we have, so we're looking to see what the delta is and what changes. And making the assumption that between the interest you make and the increase in the insurance is probably pretty close to an offset. So
yeah, this model, it does include anticipated increases in the benefit itself. This thing I have on the screen right now is kind of gives you the concept of, so when, everyone probably here has a mortgage or had one at some time. When you think about that mortgage payment, it's like, oh, $200,000, that's doable. But when you add up all the dollars that you funded to pay off that 200,000, it's a lot more than 200. These numbers here, the 609,000 under scenario A, that's today's dollars to pay for this benefit improvement. If you could throw in $609,000 into the trust today, it would fully fund that. But that's not generally what happens. Like, nobody can afford to fund the full benefit payment change, right, or the benefit improvement. So you amortize it. And as we all know, when you amortize something, you're funding something today, and it's going to keep, interest on the outstanding balance will keep applying. And that's why the dollars accumulate. And the more you push it out, the more it's going to accumulate. Because just like a 30-year mortgage versus a 15, you might take out the same loan, but at the end of the day, under the 30-year mortgage, you're actually writing a lot more in checks than you would have under the 15 years. So this concept is not much different than that. So that's something to keep in mind as you're debating that year. But again, the model gets updated. It could get some nice gains that give you some relief in certain years, or not. You just kind of stay the course and have a nice smooth model that you can pick up and contribute towards. The other concept too, in your actuarial funding, thinking about things, a flat contribution is pretty unusual. And the reason is a lot of times benefits are thought of in terms of a percent of pay. And we don't think people's pays are going to stay flat. So if you think of it as a benefit as a percentage of total payroll, maybe today, I'm making this up because I don't know what your total payroll is off the top of my head. Maybe you're funding, 5% of payroll. Well, next year, the payroll is going to go up and you still want to contribute 5% of payroll, your contribution would increase, right? So dollar wise, it's increasing, but it's what they call a level percent of pay. We calculated some of those 8X under a level percent of pay. We think your total payroll will go up 3.25% a year. So that's another kind of concept to keep in mind. In that scenario, you'd be paying less in today's dollars, but as the model builds out, you will be paying more in future years. So just something else to think about and,
Yeah, I don't think we make decisions about changing the model at this point.
Not,
Yeah, so I think we should keep it as it is in order to evaluate what we wanna do. But I mean, the real question, I think, for tonight is whether we wanna put this on the ballot or on the town meeting warrant. I mean, that's the decision that's kind of time sensitive. So what are your thoughts on that, Chris?
it's going on one of the two, you're saying?
It doesn't have to, but that's the question here. If before we can make any changes, we have to accept this MGL. So, doing that doesn't mean we're gonna change anything, but we have to do that.
Those are two steps. You approve the Mass General.
Yeah, and then decide, what model and what, if we wanna increase it.
What's the effect or your proposed effective date of this change, like July 1 of 2026?
Well, nothing's set. Basically, the process is, for adoption of the MGL that would authorize this board to go above the state, required 50%. The town would have to adopt a section of MGL. That can happen either by town meeting vote or by ballot vote. If that is put to the voters in one of those venues and the voters approve it, that doesn't change the percentage. That authorizes this board to change the percentage. So if
Gotcha.
they
Okay,
give me direction or give the FinCom direction within the budget process to budget as if it's gonna be at a certain percentage, we would budget at that percentage. But that's not, that's a decision they could make, and then, if it didn't pass or whatever. So and the other thing that's important for everybody to understand is even if the MGL was adopted and even if this board went to a different percentage, that would not preclude a future board from going back to 50%. All that Mass General Law does is authorizes the board to increase the percent.
make
It
the
does
change. Yep.
set new, baseline.
Yeah.
So,
Linda, I think we are done with you. We have,
Okay.
the second question to ask. I appreciate you taking the time and walking us through these two options. So I guess Angus would get back to you if we decide which option we want to choose and.
Yeah,
well, looking at this report, what you're seeing on the screen is the draft report that she's got and with her kind of internal review. She'll send this off to us.
So you've done both options.
already
You're
done
not
that.
looking for-
yeah,
Upward.
I've got both of them here. And then what we'll do is on this table right here, we'll call it like the net, you know what I mean? Not the full. We'll net you out to what you would need to take from either free cash or the other components of the budget. Everything on the funded ratio stays the same, but we can net out what that means in true dollars that you need to spend. I
Okay,
guess I can
Here's
wait.
what-
I can wait a day or two. Maybe we could chat next week, early in the week, if you want to. I can send you a draft of this maybe, and it's something that you needed updated or not, or I can do what I just said we can do, send it to you, and then you can decide next steps. I'm around all next week. I'm partially not around tomorrow.
Okay, good, and just, one brief thing before you jump off, and this might not be a question for you, this might be a question for Hilltop Securities, our borrowing advisor. But when we did have our bond rating calls, we have them every couple of years. Obviously, the OPEB funding percentage is a big talking point, and as you know, the town was upgraded to AAA by both Moody's and Standard & Poor's a couple of years ago. There were a lot of factors that went into that, but the OPEB contribution is a big deal. So, you know, I would be interested if we did, you know, lose
Make a
ground on
change,
that, like
yeah.
at what point, I think, you know, we're way ahead of the crowd right now. But that would be a question, the Hilltop, as to how material is that, like, if it drops to 85% or 80%, the Hilltop may say you're still like way ahead.
Exactly, yeah,
But like, at what point does it become something that could, affect the town's bond rating?
right.
Yeah.
And the other thing, there are some things kind of out of your control. The closer you get to full funding, the more volatile things can get. And that's because if the market decides to drop significantly, right, that's something kind of out of your control. Your funded status changes, you know, along with that. The towns that are 5% funded, you know, if the market drops, it's not going to change their funded ratio very much because they don't have anything to lose. So that's another thing to think about. You know, your investments, sometimes as people get closer to full funding, I'm not giving you investment advice, but it's just sort of a standard thing to look at is you may want to review, excuse me, the investment portfolio to say, do we want to maybe take some of this risk off the table and move to some more conservative investments so that, you know, if the market does decide to greatly swing either way, you're a little bit less exposed. So that's another thing to kind of maybe have a chat with them as well over at Hilltop.
Good, well, thank you.
You're
I'll put
welcome.
it-
I'm gonna wait. Wait.
Let me reclaim host.
Wait. Yeah, I'm stopping sharing. Hold on. And then, do I do something to make you the host?
Bear with me, I'll take care of it, just a second. Oh, here we go. Okay, we're all set.
I see it
All
that
right.
you are the host now. I am no longer. I'm gonna have my dinner. All right.
All right, thanks so much.
Great. You're welcome. See ya.
Bye.
So folks, what do you think? All right. So how do you want to proceed, Chris? I mean, I guess we don't have to decide about, unless we want to place it on the ballot, you know, versus the warrant.
What would be the timeline? Yeah,
So I was about to say that, ballot questions need to be to me in writing no less than 45 days before the election, so that would be March 20th.
Okay,
And a vote of the select board and then just an email is sufficient.
okay. I don't feel ready to discuss this tonight. I feel like we spent a lot of time on this already, unless you feel like you.
No, this tells a lot of information.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which is the best forum for it, to be honest. Yeah.
oh, the thing with the ballot, I think we reach more people, but we don't have the ability to educate them.
Yeah.
Versus.
It'd have to be a presentation at town meeting, right?
Yeah.
And say.
Well, I guess we could do that and have the ballot, but I just, I think that people on the ballot may not vote with full understanding of what they're voting for.
We've got it, because the numbers I found staggering, you know.
Yeah.
They have it on the hand.
Okay, anything any of you want to add that was a necessary evil for us to understand the financials?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So,
all most of it, but I think that what you just said of being able to educate people, because if they just look at a ballot question, they're just gonna go,
No, there'd have to be some kind of presentation
Yeah.
at town meeting to explain it and.
if you're gonna
Otherwise,
do that, why don't you just vote on it while you're doing it?
what do you mean?
at town meeting.
Oh, me,
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll discuss that in a future meeting. I mean, I know
you're not gonna make a decision tonight on that?
Well, I'm a little bit tapped out right now. So, yeah, I do feel ready to make a decision.
Again, if we had a presentation at town meeting, I'd prefer to see it on a ballot. That can be done.
is that, Chris, because you get higher number of voters?
I think when we've had overrides or even school budgets, I think people get very intimidated at town meeting to vote. I think the ballot gives them the privacy to do what they're thinking. But they have to be educated. That's the concern with the ballot.
Well, I feel like we also reach a larger number of people. I mean, do you have any idea what our voter turnout typically is? Probably not.
So, but I don't have exact numbers, but West Newbury actually does, compared to places I've seen have pretty high voter turnout.
Yeah,
There's also the ballot committees that can be organized, so when a ballot question is on the ballot, somebody can pull campaign finance papers and you put them up. Just like vote yes for a school or something, and that's the way to educate voters.
It depends on the election. If there's nothing on the ballot, you get 400, but actually with the mail-in, it's been much higher.
mhm.
In 700-800, I think we've had as high as 12 and 13.
With a lot of advertisement and stuff, we can get the information out there.
So do you wanna decide tonight, or?
I would opt for ballot, unless some, you have a different preference, I don't know.
Oh, it would be a fair amount of work to make sure we educate people and would that fall in the town clerk's office, or?
It depends on education, because ballot questions are subject to a lot of different laws, like municipal,
You can't
employee.
spend money on it.
Nobody during the workday, so it would be like an independent group that is doing it. You can't use paper, you can't use town email, but there are a lot of guides, and I have them from campaign finance, and from some lawyers, and exactly what public employees are permitted to do related to ballot questions and what they're not, so I can.
This strikes me as a really challenging type of question under the campaign finance, because as I recall, I looked at those materials a number of times over the years, and it's a lot of it comes down to if it's kind of value neutral and just informational, that's one thing. It's the advocacy there's like a very bright line there. But where there's so many assumptions layered in with this actuarial stuff, because it's all based on projections. So I feel like even saying like the exact same words that Linda presented tonight, in the context of once it's on a ballot question, does that seem to be advocacy one way or the other? Because it's not a fact that it's gonna be X dollars in the future, it's a projection, it's an actuarial projection.
Mhm.
So it seems somewhat hazardous in terms of those
But
restrictions on kind of.
if it's just an adoption of the mass general law,
Yeah, that's what it is.
on the ballot,
That's-
you wouldn't have a number, so it's really just.
Going into that.
But you have to
That's a
explain,
good
you have to
point.
explain the consequences if you accept it, though.
Well,
Well,
but actually, even that, though, the consequences
Not
are
really,
to
because
challenge the
you could
board.
decide not to do
Actually
anything.
change the number. That's a really good point too.
And nothing happens unless you take action.
So. Do you wanna decide or not? I feel like I don't feel ready, I feel like there's a lot of things we haven't had a chance to talk about,
It's holding.
so sorry if you thought we were gonna, I mean, our intent was to get the, actuarial report and understanding. You know, what the impact was, Gary?
Yeah, I just don't understand why it's an increase in a line item, that you can't just put it in this line item, what you're doing, explain everything, it's going to the finance committee, it's gonna be talked about. And I'm sure with an increase of that much, they're gonna have holes on it, it can be explained what it is, if voters wanna do it, they can vote for it, if they don't, they don't. Just make it subject to finance, and I don't know why it's gonna be, go out all this 17-year crap. And
Well,
you ain't doing that with the rest of it. If you take the 17 years of the total town budget and take the percentage of what this is, it's nothing.
yeah, this is
But you
what,
put it 17 years and hold this on its own, it looks all great, and we can't do that, that's gonna be crazy.
well, we can't do anything until this gets on either the town meeting, just to adopt this now.
Well, that's what I just said, put it on a town meeting.
But it doesn't, so voters won't understand the impact of it. You're saying have it be a line item thing that they can hold in the finance committee, there's no numbers associated with it. It will just-
Everything we do don't have a long-term thing on it, so why is this gonna be singled out as one?
Because it's accepting a mass general law, and it's nothing to do with money, or, that's not. Yeah,
Well, at the end of the day, it's to do with money, so.
Well,
because it's a step process, so.
all I wanted to add was that we're putting the cart before the horse. All we need to decide tonight is, are you gonna put on for the town to say yay or nay to chapter, Mass General Law, chapter 32, section 9E? That's all you're asking them to say yes or no. That's what they did back in 1988, when they adopted the other section that said that they could increase for the full-time employees, okay? Then, after town meeting, if they say yes, then you can go forward with what you're gonna, if you're gonna increase it, great. If you're not gonna increase it, then whatever. But, I mean, this has been going on since October. And I understand, I had budgets for years. I totally understand and I respect what you have to go through. It's just that it just keeps going. I think we need to know all that. We do need to know what the impact's gonna be financially, of course, but again, it's the cart before the horse, because we haven't even accepted the chapter and section that we need to even put.
We don't know that we want to.
That's correct.
So we're doing our due
Putting
diligence.
too much time into something that may not ever happen.
I disagree. We didn't know to the last meeting that we actually had to adopt this MGL, so that's why.
Right, I figured it out.
Okay, well, you didn't tell us that in October, so, that's why we're still working on it, because it's evolving, things are changing, we're learning about this prior vote. So, I mean, we're not trying to stonewall you, we're trying to do our work amongst all the other stuff.
I understand, I understand, it's just
Okay,
that I feel like we're trying to figure out how much it's gonna cost, but we don't know what it is.
well,
And if it's ever gonna be.
I do think both things need to occur, on a dual track, so. Yeah, I think we should table this until the next meeting, and, because of this whole campaign, finance issue. I would also prefer a ballot, but we have proper education, so I want to understand exactly how much, we can educate and,
I'll prepare something, it's not that's not.
One other thing, I don't know if this is material, but I think it is, we haven't gotten into, if the MGL was adopted and if the board increased the percentage, I think we're kind of operating under the assumption that that would take effect July 1st, but that's not set. That's something that the board would need to decide. If that was the decision the board came to, then I think that would argue in favor of a town meeting vote, for the reason that since the election takes place a week after town meeting, if there was an anticipation of a cost impact for FY 27, we would need to have that on the warrant. And so if we appropriated those monies, not knowing for another week if the MGL was going to be accepted, that's a little awkward.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also very aware that we'll have two new board members, and potentially.
Two new board members, yeah.
A little bit leery about, rushing this, but I understand you've been waiting for a while, so, just trying to balance everything.
Could that article be in the special town meeting? So
That wouldn't change anything,
no,
no, I mean,
so if it was there, then you could have the next segment be the annual town, the regular town meeting, so maybe it'll be approved or what's it, you know?
it'll be the same night, but if it's gonna be part of the budget, that's what Angus is saying, this would have to be part of the budget, which is.
Or part of an article.
Yeah.
Is the amount of the OPEB. Well, it would be both. It would affect the health insurance operating line, and it would affect the amount of the OPEB contribution.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm sure Angus will keep you apprised, the next time it's on the agenda. You should be in here. Are you all right if we go ahead to articles, talk about the DPW? Just because we have Brian waiting and, so I just to make sure we go back to the health insurance office.
Back in the seat, GI and the water department here, we wanted to.
Yeah.
Think of that.
All right, Brian.
Okay.
So I shared the information you provided, that was really helpful, I guess I'll start, Chris. My underlying question is, are we sure we're gonna keep this building and keep using it?
Yeah.
That was one of the things in your write-up, is if we're not gonna keep it, then these improvements don't make sense. So I guess it's a question for Angus too. I mean, it sounds like it's being used for kind of a hodgepodge of things. You mentioned continue ed, you know, they could do that here. They don't need the building to do that. I know it's your workspace primarily, right?
Right. And the DPW uses it for storage of a lot of their equipment.
Like the
No.
heavy equipment,
Yeah,
the vehicle.
vehicles,
Yeah.
mowers, sanders,
Yeah,
you know, they rotate it seasonally.
so there's not enough room in the pipe state garage for that equipment.
Correct. So that's their overflow section there in the back. The water department stores all their equipment in there as well.
And they don't have room down at the treatment plant to store stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So-
kind of knew you would ask me that question.
Mhm.
And so my answer was gonna be, first of all, it's important to. The stuff that's there, I know you were hodgepodge, and that's fine, but, it's like important stuff. So it's not, I don't want anyone to think it's like, oh, just missile, like, it's really critical to some of the services that are provided, certainly for water, for facilities and for the storage DPW, highway stuff, but, in terms of, you know, in 10 years, there is not only no plan for anything different. There's not really ever been any discussion of any plan for something different. So my assumption is that we're gonna continue to use this building as long as it's standing. That doesn't mean that's correct, but I just want to be clear that there is no like alternate plan that's ever been talked about. So I think a tour of the building would be really important just to make, and I know you've been through it, yeah, you've been through it, you've been through it, so.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that, but I'm wondering, is it time to have that conversation, you know, before we continue to put money into it?
I'm gonna say, if you decided to replace that building, you're looking at millions of dollars.
Even if you get one of those one,
And one building, still looking at a million, I mean, they gotta
The
go,
land,
yeah,
it's hard to
place to
find,
put it, right?
it's hard to, unless you put it in that
That's
particular
what-
site, but then you're, you know, then you're gonna displace a lot of that equipment. It's gonna be, you know, it takes a long time to do those projects up, you're gonna demolish that building and then redo the site. And again, I mean, it's a long process. And a long-
I mean, I think if anything happens, it would happen in tandem with the school, if the school would move elsewhere and the site was up for redevelopment. But that's still 10 years away,
Mhm.
so for 38 grand, where else you gonna?
But is this it? I guess that's what I'm saying, because you had an article last year to do a bunch of
This
ventilation
is
improvements.
almost the same article as last year, but with more detailed stuff.
But the focus of that was worker health, right?
After the original, it was more ventilation and fixing the windows so that we could open them. And now, you know, recently I've been boarding them up as they're falling out of the building.
Yeah.
So, that's not helping the ventilation or anything, but, it's a decision we're gonna have to make as far as the longevity of that building, I think weighs heavily, and I agree with Chris, I mean, where else within that 10-year span are you going to be able to replicate this building? And I think that's a difficult question, an expensive one, if you decide not to, and for the 38,000.
And is.
And this is gonna, it's almost impossible to insulate the inside of that building the way it's built
Mhm.
right now, because it's a block building and everything is on the external part of the walls, all the electrical work, all the plumbing. So you can't just go in there, put insulation on the interior part and sheetrock it, it's just, it would be way too expensive and
Mhm.
the ceilings would have to come down and all that, so there'd be a lot of construction work there.
Yeah.
So, if we're gonna do it, doing an outside envelope makes sense,
Mhm.
and at that point, we're gonna decide.
So you're equating it with the school, so we're gonna
Well,
keep it
no,
for
that-
10 years, and so we should do whatever we can to.
Patch it together and then have a plan at that time. The other thing is just the value of the equipment that gets stored in there, gets protected,
Mhm.
is you're gonna save that value.
I'm not suggesting we don't protect and store, I'm just asking.
But if you don't do this building, what happens? Deteriorates in a certain time frame, it's gone.
I'm just, yeah, I'm not saying we should, I'm just asking the question
No.
because it was raised in Brian's memo, you know,
Yeah,
if we're gonna,
I understand, I just think it's worth
okay.
patching it together for that, so you have a better plan and funding, it's gonna be a big number.
Yeah, so.
And to answer your question, this would probably be the end of this. as far as, it would have all new windows,
Okay.
it would have all new siding.
Yeah.
And then that's basically as we would go with that building.
Okay, all right, that's helpful. So did you have any other questions? I mean, I don't wanna talk too much about this because the FinCom is not here.
Yeah, we're not gonna vote it until we hear what the percentage between water and
Well,
town.
that's the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight. I mean, I think, you weren't able to confirm that those numbers are correct, right? That water is paying for.
I mean, I believe,
Okay,
I talked to Mark, everyone and Jenny, we all think we're pretty comfortable that what you said is correct, that water's paying 100% of the electrical.
Correct.
It's just, because there's like, there's like six or seven different national grid accounts
Yeah.
just with the same street address.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just, it's worth like, I wanna be 100, but I think, there's no one who doesn't think that's the case. I even talked to Jody and she said that's been the case for as long as she's been here.
Correct.
They've always paid that bill. I told her, I said, I'm surprised, cause like when Mikey Tay was here, he was so particular about what water's paying and what town's paying, and I was kind of surprised that they've been paying that bill for all these years. It's not a big amount.
yeah.
But to everything I can tell, waters, and they're definitely paying all the oil because it's an oil fueled, whatever it is.
It fuels the heat on the water department side of the building.
Okay, and then you've got your own kind of
Little
wood
heat pump.
stove and a heat,
Yeah.
right?
So how did the roof get funded? Right?
Yeah,
It didn't come up when we did the roof.
I think it's because I labeled it as old DPW garage.
So
And
then
nobody-
they should be 100% since we pay for the roof.
We didn't pay for the roof. We did pay for
So
the
who
roof.
pays for the water?
So I've talked to Mark about it a couple of times. He and I are meeting tomorrow and the water commission's meeting on Tuesday. If there's gonna be a proposal for water to pick up, some amount of this, they're gonna need to get up to speed and.
Is it on their agenda though?
Not specifically for Tuesday, no.
I think they need to pay something. I mean, I don't think the town, especially if we.
I'm gonna be close to 50-50 split, going down, we'll wait down that to FinCom, that discussion for FinCom's here.
Well, I think they're looking to us for the direction on that. So I just wanted to, get preliminary thoughts anyway. Okay, anything else on this? Okay, thank you, Brian.
I wanna thank Brian. I mean, you've done a lot of nice work on this.
Yeah.
And I think that I just wanna recognize that because I think we all see that you're doing a really
Yeah.
good job on this stuff.
No problem.
All right. thank
Part of
you.
my job.
See you. Thanks,
Okay,
Brian.
thanks.
Yep.
All right, let's go back to D, which is the insurance opt-out. So I guess to me, the question, or the primary question is, what is the purpose of this opt-out? I mean, I don't really think that that's encouraging people to not take insurance from the town of West Newbury, which seems to be what the memo suggests. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that, Chris, or?
And I think Angus, we spoke earlier today, did a, I don't know what to kind of call it, conversation, but suppose you did that number, does that have anybody say, ooh, I'm gonna jump out of the health insurance plan along with a spouse and jump onto here? The answer is no. So that should not be the intent of it, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
But in the same regard, when you see it hasn't been modified significantly over time, I mean, I would eventually, I'm gonna say, suppose you did 2,000 on the family and 1,000 on the individual, seems.
that seems more palatable, just doubling it seems excessive.
If that's what they wanna do is to keep up with it, they ought to do it incrementally over every couple of years or something, so.
Mhm.
Basically saying acknowledge it and say, okay, the town benefits and. If you already have insurance and you can pick up $2,000 here, that's a nice benefit too, so.
So 22 employees received opt-out, out of how many, Angus?
So I've got the current numbers right here and it is 22 out of, let's see,
This is non-union, right,
non-union, although union members are eligible as well.
for this?
Yep. Yep. They, over the many years, because this question came up a few years ago, we checked and over the many years, they have.
I think in the contract, one of the, I can't remember which one, wanted to hire opt-out,
That's
last
right.
time we negotiate.
Right.
Said, no, we're gonna
Right,
stick, so.
yeah,
And pretty much if the union contracts pretty much say if the town employees get this, then we get it too, on a lot of things
A lot
like
of
this.
things. So the total number of people on either a family or an individual plan is 43.5.
So bad for that half.
The reason being our building commissioner, we split with Groveland, so we split half and half the insurance rate.
So
So
that's,
43.5 total, and then there are 20, what do you say, it's 20, where's?
22.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the number I gave you includes that, so 43.5 total, of which 22 are opt-out.
so half of our employees opt out.
Half who are eligible are on the opt-out.
So when I did the math based on families and singles, if you go to 2,000 and 1,000, that's $10,000 ad this year.
So
If
that's
it's
not budgeted for.
No. And
No, that would affect the FY27 insurance budget.
But if you did it with what the proposal was for the 3,000, 1,500, it's $30,000. That's a difficult one to.
Yeah, right now, and I'm sorry, these numbers are a little more confusing on my spreadsheet because it's got both general fund and water, so I have to like do the math, because we budget those separately, obviously. But right now, between water and general funds, we are carrying in the proposed budget exactly $30,000 to fund this program. So if you doubled it, it would double that number. If you went up by a third, it would add about, what do you say, about 10 grand? Sounds about right to me.
And so, I mean, what generally, from your experience, is the intent of this? It's not really meant to drive behavior. It's just an acknowledgement that they're costing the town less by not taking insurance, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, where I was up in Maine, and that was, to be frank, my first exposure to this, because prior to my job up in Hamden, my prior work had always been in hadn't been in the administration office, so I'd never been administering health benefits, but up in Maine, they had this. And it was a very generous benefit up there. It was based on half the town's costs for a family plan. So this was back, I was there from 2015 to 2018. It was on the order of $7,500 a year, which I remember thinking like, wow, that's I was like, okay, that's what they did and that's what we did. So I got here and I remember thinking, oh, that's really thin, because it was a small number. I think up in Maine, that could have caused someone, like if your spouse has a plan and you have a plan, you're gonna take that into account. I think these numbers are not meaningful enough to probably drive that change in behavior. And I think it's more of just a recognition that, hey, other employees that are comparably situated, the town's effectively paying more because they're paying a health plan. So it's kind of more of like a nice thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on it.
Okay.
Caitlin may see it differently.
In her memorandum, the 22 employees received the opt-out, she splits it by families and singles. Is that including all employees, union, non-union?
On my list here, it doesn't, I have a breakdown between health plans between Blue Cross and Union, but on the opt-out, it's all aggregated, so it would include everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just don't wanna find out, you say yes.
Yeah, no,
yes,
it definitely is
people else.
everybody, yeah. Of those 22, 2 are water and 20 are general funds.
So it seems like it would be appropriate to discuss this with FinCom. I mean, this is an impact to the budget, right?
Yeah, and if you did approve or recommend the change, actually, it is your authority to approve it. So if you approved it, at a future meeting, I would adjust the budget accordingly, and in order to maintain the bottom line, we need to either increase the bottom line or offset it with a cut elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. You said 10,000 is the impact, Chris, of what you're proposing. Are you interested in getting FinCom's opinion on this, or?
Yeah,
Okay,
that'd be a good idea.
all right. So can we add that to the? Sorry.
I was gonna say, do you wanna add it to the joint?
For
I would
the
like-
March 4th, I would say so, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
good.
it's fresh in mind, yeah.
So Kristen said 10K and the impact of the proposed is 33. I think that's what you said, so.
The attic cost is 10, that's what I worked at, Angus had the number.
Yeah, I have the specific numbers and they line up very, very much with what Chris is saying.
Okay. Just, you know,
Yes, it would, on the, to double it, it would add 30,000, of which 27 would be general fund and 6, or 3 would be, water fund. And to go up a third would be about a third of that.
and so is this something the water department should weigh in on, or,
It would affect their budget.
yeah?
Yeah, I mean, they get that number from me, their health insurance number. I run that number and get it to them and they just key it into their budget. They're always curious as to what's behind it.
Yeah,
We
sure.
provide them the same sheet that we.
But if we're gonna hold them to have to pay this, it should be where. Have input.
They do have FY 27 budget on Tuesday's agenda, and I am planning to be at that.
Oh,
meeting.
that, so can you?
Yep.
You said, yeah, okay, great. All right, so to move on to the review and discussion of proposed warrant articles, so we did the DPW one. Article 30 and 31 were the fire department articles, so my concern with these, we did vote on these, but, we'll get into this a little bit later. I felt like I was very unprepared because I hadn't attended the capital meeting the week before and, so I followed up with, Chief Dwyer on these. You know, last spring, we approved funding to do a police department asset study.
Or fire.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
fire. And I really feel like that should be done before we make any huge, especially $380,000 expense. You know, if the staffing in the department changes, perhaps the need changes there. So I discussed that with Dwyer. Also, I'm not clear on the SCBA units. That was in the capital plan, but only for, I think 250,000. So now
I
it's.
think it was actually less. I think it was, wasn't it?
It was under 300,000,
Yeah.
and so now it's increased by 100,000, so that's concerning as well. So I kind of talked to these concerns with him, and he is fine with withdrawing both of these articles. I asked him to look into grant funding to see if that would be an option. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Chris.
I, again, was frustrated with the meeting last week. And that won the tanks, I would have thought, I've talked to other people in the industry, there are grants available, and I think that should always, and they said, that's exactly what this, there's state grants and there's FEMA grants,
Mhm.
and they're both fairly easy to apply for, and they look to do protection of the individuals and equipment, things like that, said that's something that we look very favorably on. Grant application period is just opened about a week and a half ago, so you've got,
For FEMA or the state?
it was the FEMA.
Okay.
I believe. I did look online, because I started going down the rabbit hole online, and there are state grants available too, which
I
are
think they
open.
just closed. One of them just closed, because I also looked at it.
I mean, the state, I think, had 5.8 million, but FEMA's got like 220 million. So all I'm saying is there are grants out there. And I think that's a much better place to start right now.
Mhm.
He's got the time, the equipment's 9 years, not quite 10, so we have a full year. Could almost make it through 2 grant request cycles too.
Yeah, so he said 10 to 13 years is the typical
Yeah.
replacement, and he's having it inspected soon. So I think it's reasonable to withdraw it, and he's fine with it. With the understanding that if they're not successful with grant funding, then this will come back. You know, potentially next spring. I don't think it'll be ready for the fall, but. So if you are okay with that, I would ask to.
I think that's great.
To remove, I mean,
Do we need a motion?
do we need to, if we're removing the warrant.
I think it would be good to have a vote on that, yes.
Okay, so. You make a motion to remove, what's tentative article number 30 for the 382 for the, SCBA apparatus, and temporary article number 31 for the 65,000 for the off-road utility to remove them from the warrant.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting minutes. February 5th. I don't, do you review these after?
I did this time just to see if
Okay,
changes.
I didn't have any changes.
No, so, make a motion to accept the minutes of February 5th is submitted.
Just let me make sure I didn't have any. Okay, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Angus, on February 12th, there was something I wanted you to confirm. This was the budget presentation and a discussion about planning and the potential change in, structure.
Hmm.
It's on page 204, page 71 of the packet. About halfway down, Jennings proposed reimagining the town planner position. Originally, this had to be more of a project-related full-time. And that wasn't what you presented as part of the budget, right? I don't know. I changed it to what I thought you said, but
Oh, okay, so I don't know how it was originally written.
it was originally written that this would be a full-time position, more planning, but called a planning coordinator, so it seemed like it was.
No, that was, I think, conflating a couple of
Okay,
things.
okay,
I think what I said was that there were two things I had considered.
okay,
One of which would have been a full-time planner with project management responsibilities. The other would be a planning coordinator.
okay,
And what I included in the budget was a planning coordinator.
okay. Do you want the edit to reflect that you consider both?
No, I don't think so. I think
It's
that's
fine like that?
confusing. Yeah, because that's what's proposed.
Okay, then that was the only thing.
I've got one
Okay,
insignificant change, just maybe.
I guess in terms of just the wording though,
yeah,
I think it would be important to use the title that's proposed of planning coordinator rather than. It's not changing the town planner position, it's actually not having the town planner position, having the planning coordinator.
okay,
So it's not, and I think I wouldn't say reimagining because it's really back to what it was prior to about 2017. When what had been a planning coordinator for many, many years in the town was upgraded to a town planner. I went back through actually, Rebecca went through, she pulled a lot of really useful background as I was researching this idea. She pulled a lot of minutes from planning board, select board and FinCom from the era when that change was made. And that wasn't made at a change in personnel, that was made while the former planner were. Leah had been hired as a planning coordinator, it was changed while he was here. So anyhow, I have all that background, but it's really the proposal is to
just to
revert
okay.
to what had been the case less than a decade ago. So I think.
How would you want to word this then?
So I think, Jennings proposed, in something like, instead of funding the town planner, and I would even say, I mean, part of this is we are having a change of personnel.
Mhm.
So Jennings proposed, given the pending, departure of the town planner, rather than proposing funding for a part-time town planner position, to instead, propose, more hours for a planning coordinator position, which is, I mean, it says more of an administrative role. I think that's not inaccurate, but it's not,
Mhm.
it's more than an administrative role.
Yeah.
So I think in more of a board support role as opposed to a, frankly, a department head role.
Yeah,
Uh,
so do you want me to write that or?
I'll make a
happy with
note.
what you just said.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think that's, yeah, and I'll just try to make it as accurate as possible as to what in fact I said during the meeting, but that was the gist of it.
okay, that's good. Chris, what was your question?
The minor change, page 3 or 4, referencing article number 14,
Mhm.
and then at the end it says rationale by Dan and it's question mark. That was a edit that I put in for Max, but I wasn't sure if
Oh,
Dan had made that. But, and then when I look within Angus's, scorecard, there is nobody assigned to the rationale, so I believe it was Dan, but I just wasn't sure.
so should we just delete that?
Delete the question mark, yeah.
Oh, just a question mark?
Yeah. No, Dan stuck with it. Yeah, for the first time, I did go back and look at what I sent to Max, and then what came back, which presumably you had been reviewed. Make a motion to accept the minutes of February 12th as amended.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, moving on to discussion, the first item is update on the proposed engagement of MVPC to lead the comprehensive plan bidding process. So do you want to give any background on this, Angus, or should we just?
Yeah, it just.
Yes.
Okay, all right, great.
You're welcome.
Okay, good. So well, I don't know how much background you want. But
Well,
the
this is
reason,
not an action item, right? So,
no,
okay,
the recent background is that, following a period of months that appear to be pretty unproductive, in the planning office in terms of coming up with a scope for the visioning process. The direction the planning board set, we talked at a prior meeting, was to instead invite MVPC to provide these services, which has a number of benefits, both their, known, quantity in terms of their staffing and capabilities. They've done a lot of work with the town on planning in recent years, and also they're exempt from procurement, so you just sign a contract with them. The town could just sign a contract with them. So the planning board chair at the planning board's direction had reached out to MVPC, invited them to submit a proposed scope, which is what we received, and that was what was in the packet. On Tuesday, we had a meeting with Ian Burns from MVPC, myself, Chris Weil joined, which I was very appreciative of him being there, given his current role, but also his long history with the comp planning process. We're joined by the town planner, by planning board chair and another planning board member. We provided some input on the draft scope. We had some pretty interesting discussions regarding not the work scope, but the actual scope of the comp plan, which will be worked out through the visioning process. And we received an updated scope from MVPC yesterday, which I had sent around by email, and I can put up on the screen here, which had minor but important changes that came out of the meeting on Tuesday. So this is on for discussion for the board, not for vote. If we continue in this direction, which I think we should, I would have the authority to sign that contract under the town's contract signing policy, but I wouldn't want to sign a contract unless I was sure that it was fully aligned with the scope that you want to see. So I very much want your input on the scope, but it's not something I'm asking you to vote.
okay,
And then what I told the planning board, which I think I put into this packet, is if there's anything substantive coming out of tonight's discussion, I would send them a note tomorrow, so they would have that for their meeting on Tuesday night. If it looks like we're good to go, I don't think they're expecting to need to take action Tuesday, but if there is something substantive tonight, I would communicate that. Ideally, make sure everyone's in alignment before we sign a contract, before I sign a contract.
so question for, I guess, both of you, the build out analysis, is that typically part of the visioning process?
Not in my experience. I was surprised that was part of the visioning process, to be honest.
That usually.
I don't think it's part of the vision, I think it's a part of the service MVPC can provide.
Well, but it's something that planning board was very specific that they wanted it part of this upfront work.
Did they say why?
It wasn't talked about Tuesday. This comes up, I think this was talked about at one of their planning board meetings, 1 or 2 meetings ago. I don't know why. It's very important to the comp planning process, whether it's necessary for the visioning stage. I've been surprised that was included.
I wasn't, I think they're trying to get the biggest bang for the buck, they have the money, MVPC will be good at it. I think it's almost like 2 complete different components, the visioning and the build up. I don't think they're intrinsically tied together, but
Okay.
their services at MVPC
And
can
provide-
quite easily and
Yeah.
well provide for us,
Hmm.
so,
So it's typically part of the comp plan?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I also wondered about the working group, I would like to see that defined in here. I know they said, did they say 2 members of the planning board, or?
It's not been defined as far as I know.
No, it's not been defined. There has, there's been a draft scope that had been kicked around.
Right.
That had talked about, 1 member of Well, no, that was just on the vendor selection process. No, I don't think, I've never seen anything in writing on how that would be constituted.
I think it, you know, before we say that we're in agreement, I would like to see, you know, what their vision, because there were a couple different scenarios that were floated around early on. I mean, that could be in section 2 on the working group. You know, in the library, facilities plan, the working group was identified as part of the scope, you know, for the procurement document, so I don't think it's unusual. I guess you've already been through this as part of the meeting, right?
We can talk about the working group there, no.
No, I mean, just this whole scope or the contract. I assume if you had any input, you would have already shared with Angus.
Well, the only minor input I have is relative to number 2. In the meeting, it changed that the meeting minutes were gonna be done by MVPC. They added $1,000 to the contract for that.
Oh, okay.
And it's just very likely, I would have had it within the body of the paragraph, I would have said MVP. That's up to 10-6 meetings of the working group and provide, maybe wrote down something, responsible for compiling minutes of the meetings for approval by the working group, to comply with open meeting regulations and on a rolling basis. Because you don't want them to supply all the drop all at the end.
Working groups are exempt from the open meeting law and from minutes.
Only if, but not if they're appointed by a public body. So if the planning board is establishing this this working group by appointment, that makes it a public body.
But if the
Whether
town
they call it a
planner-
working group or call it a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Whereas if the town planner assembled a group of people, that position's not subject to open meeting law, so that person could do that, but. Once a public body establishes a body, it's a public body. That's what the open meeting law, the guidance says, yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, just, hang on. Not part of the contract, but it's part of the conversation. That to me, I wanted to make sure that MVPC, and that would be Ian, who was at the meeting, was aware of what I, as a select person, thought were 4 issues that need to get specifically addressed within the comprehensive plan. Now, this is just a vision, but I didn't want them to get through visioning and have them say, I wish somebody had brought this up before. And there was tremendous resistance at the meeting with this, but the 4 issues, and I did speak them and told what I thought. And I've spoken to Ann Sense and said I'll be pushing for these still. The Page School and the Dunn parcel. Because whatever happens at Page potentially could impact Dunn's, and Dunn's need to be looked, this is done at Pipe State, in case anybody's curious. There have been groups fighting over that parcel for many years, and the intention has always been, when a comprehensive plan was to come forward, that parcel would receive a degree of attention. Second one would be the water department, both the structure of it, the infrastructure, the long-term plan, the whole thing. Third would be climate resiliency and its impacts to the town in the future. And 4th would be governance. And in the meeting, I was told the comprehensive plan is a land use and these didn't fit, but I disagree. From this perspective, we'll be pushing to have those 4 issues addressed.
So the visioning, it seems to me like even if those things aren't part of the visioning, they should be included in the breadth of things that are looked at in visioning, right?
I just want to make sure that they're not missed or neglected within the visioning itself, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing surveys and having focus groups, you need to include all the issues that you're gonna be discussing in the comp plan, right?
I would hope so. I just don't want any surprises and,
Yeah,
and the fact that,
did Ian have any, like, input? Or was he hesitant to weigh in?
I don't recall what his,
I think he was hesitant. Yeah, I think it became so clear there was such a pretty fundamental difference of opinion. Chris and I articulated one point and Ann and Brian articulating another. It seemed like Ian was a little sheepish about.
Okay.
well, I made the strong statement, and I think it's accurate. The select board put this article forward for the funding based very heavily on needing direction on governance within the town. So to have that ignored would be a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, I made the point that, since 2018, you know, I've been talking to every single board about the value that could come from a town government study committee or a town charter committee or something like that. And, well, my first couple of years, there was subsumed by a lot of other things, and there was some sense of, you know, from that board saying, well, we don't want to get into that because we just adopted the new form of government, so we want to let it go a couple of years before we kind of do that, even though they acknowledged that some of the flaws I was pointing out in the form of government, they didn't disagree with, but they said it's not the right time. And then more in the modern era, which I say is kind of since maybe Wendy, since you've been on the board, or maybe even a little before that, some of those discussions have been more along the lines of that's a great important thing to talk about. That would be a great thing to do as part of the comprehensive plan. And so I made that point very specifically at the meeting on Tuesday, that it's been intentional to hold off so that it could be part of a comprehensive coordinated look at form of government and how it interrelates with the many other issues in the comp plan. I was frankly stunned that there was any disagreement on that whatsoever. It just is so fundamental to what does or doesn't happen, and how long it takes for things to happen or not happen.
So
Well,
what-
maybe, okay,
I was just gonna say, if just a statement saying topics will it include, would that go into the scope? I mean, is
I
that?
don't think it needs to go into the visioning scope, because it should, but just to be aware of it.
But I guess that's what I was trying to say is, if you're visioning, what are you visioning? And if you're only visioning land use, then you're not gonna be, like, shouldn't this document feed into the comp plan? Or what is? the
It should feed
purpose?
into it, but it shouldn't redirect it either too. Within the governance too, I'm not saying it will give you the solution, it might identify the issues and the path. And then what the previous plan would have was a work plan matrix at the back.
Mhm.
And maybe that's where, you know, I think they may be overthinking it, that we're expecting them
To do.
to
all-
give the final
Yeah.
plan. It's not, it's to identify the issues and give you possible solutions.
I think those issues, those 4 issues are so important that they should, I mean, can't you just have one sentence that says, you know, some of the issues that we see West Newbury face in the future include X, Y, Z?
Sure, you can put it in there somewhere as a statement of our interest, I guess.
Part of it, Wendy, I think you started to ask the question of, you know, the purpose of the visioning, and part of the value I see of that kind of front-loaded process is so that you come out of that with a clear direction on whether, you know, your comp plan is going to address everything defined by statute.
Mhm.
But I think it's important to have clarity before you sign a contract and go forward with this, you know, major initiative for a comp plan, that both the consultant you select and prospective consultants that you might be interviewing or considering have some direction from the town as to, look, these are some of the big, there's gonna be a lot of issues.
Mhm.
These are some of the big prominent complex issues, so that you're sure when you engage someone that you're engaging someone with the qualifications and the experience that you need for those issues, and that they're not blindsided. They sign a contract and come in and find, like, you've got this major school initiative, for instance, that's got obvious implications for all kinds of things, and saying, like, wait a second, we didn't really staff for that, we didn't really budget for that. So it's really partly in fairness to the consultant you're hiring, that they know going into it that there's some big issues that are proceeding in parallel with this. So I think part of what I heard at the meeting on Tuesday was this idea of, well, we don't want to presuppose what those topics are gonna be. And my feeling is, like, these aren't, like, if people don't know
Not
that, it's because.
presupposing the outcome, but the topics need to be on the table.
Correct,
Yeah.
because they just by any standard, they are major issues, have to be a major focus. And they're a major focus of this board and my office, but
They're gonna be the biggest
They
issue
need
in the town in the next 20 years. I mean,
Right.
we know that sitting here.
of course we do, yeah.
So I think in the 3rd paragraph of the introduction to the scope would be a perfect place to just to put it. This work is meant to build a foundation from which to start the master planning process, you know, issues the town faces in the future, X, Y, Z, or something like that.
You could even be very specific, and say the select board sees the 4 most critical issues moving forward as boom, boom, boom.
Does that seem appropriate, Angus, or is that?
It seems appropriate to me, but I got some significant pushback from some things that I suggested that I thought were very benign. And there was vociferous pushback, so I don't think anything's gonna be seen as uncontroversial, unfortunately.
But
I
it
don't
can't
think,
go
I
out
think,
unless you sign it, right?
correct, that's correct, yeah.
So perhaps we should attend the planning board meeting on Tuesday, and they're gonna be discussing this, I assume.
Stay attending, they only Zoom.
Well, we'll be doing,
So I was looking at their agenda earlier today. I had reached out to Ann midday asking for a different item to be on the agenda before I realized, I realized they had already posted, so I sent her a note saying, hey, I know you've already posted, but I asked her to put FY27 budget on
oh,
there.
okay,
And I told her I'd be getting her a memo, probably on Saturday about that, no later than Saturday about that. And I did look at the agenda and it was very lean. I don't remember seeing anything about the vision. Oh yeah, no, it is. Okay, discussion, vision, scope and work group is on there for Tuesday. If we think you're both gonna be there, I would say we should post that tomorrow as
so were you planning to first? Is that
Well,
right?
I am.
You don't have to, I mean, I can go, or I can Zoom.
The lights down, dark and lurking.
You're right.
Like a notice of appearance. Yeah, we can, if
Okay.
we can post a notice of appearance, that way the public has fair notice that
Okay.
that a quorum may be present, but would not be formally convening or deliberating.
But we can each
But-
offer input.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you just wouldn't be acting as a board, but that's what we've done in the past, is as kind of if we either know or think that there's gonna be a quorum of a public body present, we post notice. But they're not convening and they're not taking a vote, but that way the public has fair notice that there would be, a quorum present.
Okay. Anything else on this? This.
Good. So, at the 4 issues,
Yeah,
working group,
yeah, and
and
then,
clarification on minutes.
Right.
all right, the next item is summary of the process to date. So this is, I guess, a follow-on of something I mentioned earlier, just. I mean, I think it's great to have FinCom and select board deliberating together. It's better for employees, but I feel like the way the last meeting went. It was kind of light on engagement. The votes were very quick and I didn't feel like I had the full information. And it seems like from your prior comment, you felt the same.
Oh, I definitely, I mean, there was motions made, no discussion, but I just was lost. I was particularly lost on the line item budget because FinCom was voting it because, as Angus stated, it's their budget, we didn't even have input at that time, so at some point.
They didn't vote anything on the budget, just on articles.
Jim did by mistake.
Well, they went through all the line items and we're gonna come back, but we didn't even have input, I mean. It was strange. So,
So I think, I mean, what I would propose on Tuesday is to just lay out a process maybe where.
Wednesday, right?
Sorry, Wednesday,
Yeah.
where the proponent, not like a formal presentation, but just explains what their article is. Start with discussion and questions, and then move to voting. I mean,
I think you, on some of the articles were more confused because you hadn't attended their pre-meeting in January, which that wasn't supposed to be their full vetted meeting. I thought it was gonna occur here and it just didn't.
Yeah, I would have not gone to the Greenbelt thing if I knew, no.
I just ended up there, but it wasn't, that meeting was never intended to be at the level they had it, and I thought we were gonna do
Yeah.
the joint meeting here with that level of detail, and it just wasn't,
Mhm.
so. Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have that.
I think the same as we're talking about a town meeting, whoever is sponsoring the article should at least give us 2 sentences about what it's for and then entertain questions and then. Okay, so I'll think I need to reach out to Dennis beforehand or just lay that, discuss it at the beginning of the meeting.
I'll be talking with him, hopefully tomorrow. I'm gonna send him, Rebecca and I have been working on the draft agenda for next Wednesday's meeting, so I was gonna send that over to him tomorrow. And assuming we'll be able to connect by phone tomorrow, but we don't have a specific call scheduled. I'll certainly share that with him.
Mhm.
I think if you connect with him before next Wednesday, that's
Okay.
gonna be important.
Okay. All right, so the meeting is next Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I guess I was gonna post the affordable housing trust. If that's the normal meeting, I'll just, you could probably skip that. That's not.
Okay.
So we'll start at 5:30. What was the issue that we wanted to,
You wanted to.
5:45? That was something that wasn't. on the vote.
Oh, about the press release.
Oh, that's right. To file.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
So do you think 5:45 is enough time, Chris? What?
I would probably say 5:30, because they kind of start filtering in, and I guess it's disruptive, so.
All right. So is that enough time? Yeah, Wednesday, we're so good. Okay, any other comments or thoughts on the process? For the articles, budget? So you work out the items that are gonna be on there with Dennis, right?
Yeah, yeah, I have a draft select board as well. I'll send that to both of you at the same
Okay.
time. And we don't need to post till Monday.
Mhm.
So I'll be working on the packet over the weekend. I'd like to get a packet out, so I'd like to get the agenda finalized tomorrow.
Mhm.
But I'll send you both the draft. Couple of items that we wanted to include, that Rebecca and I wanted to include, were discussion of this whole idea on the capital articles of potentially a capital budget.
Mhm.
I got some really good input from 3 of our nearby towns, so I have their correspondences and their samples, so we're gonna put that in the packet so you can see how other towns do it.
Yeah.
But just to have the full group talk about, do you like that? And if so, if we start, moving that direction or not, but that's something I wanted to discuss. I also wanted to talk about, I wanted to get things pinned down with the FinCom as to whether they'll be weighing in on the non-financial articles.
Mhm.
There's 5 articles that are either zoning or general bylaw, and I'm not talking about the fees, they'll obviously be involved with that one. But things like the dog or the cannabis or the parking and loading, for instance. I'd like to pin them down, because if they're not gonna weigh in on those, I would put those on the March 12th select board agenda. If they are gonna weigh in on those, we're gonna have to shoot one of those into one of the joint meetings, so I want to get that pinned down. And also I've asked Amanda to do a brief memo on the dog bylaw that kind of lay out that there's,
These, that's these.
well, dog bylaw.
I got the numbers in 2 different fees this morning.
Oh, yeah,
But I can do
I thought it was the dog, the always law or the more robust amendments. To kind of get some direction on that, because I don't want to get those drafts into.
So I was gonna bring that up as a future agenda item
Okay,
tonight.
okay.
Feedback.
Oh, okay, so,
Yeah.
and then, yeah.
I thought it was on the fees, because it was about, hey, we either have the mass general law and it gets accepted.
Oh,
or
we're gonna talk about fees, but I don't need a memo on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, the memo is.
All right.
I
Sorry.
don't think we need a memo, because I'm really clear on.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great.
Sorted that out. Okay,
But yeah, really, yeah, okay, we'll talk.
all right,
So,
good. Okay, discussion of FY 27 budget items, what did you have in mind here?
nothing specific, just if there, I mean, one thing that, as you know, I did receive, a number of departments that included within their proposed budgets some non-COLA changes, and so I took those out. I've been communicating that to the different departments and explaining that. So, I don't think like a broad email or message memo on that is needed at this time. I'm doing it more piecemeal, just as for the departments that did propose that, but let's see. One thing we do have, there's a couple of loose ends we're trying to tie up. Jenny and I have a meeting scheduled next week with the finance director, Newbury, on the ACO. Because we don't have a proposal from them, so I carry just a placeholder amount with an arbitrary COLA. And since they did, it was Ethan Manning we always used to work with, but he left in June and there's a new director and there really hasn't been a lot of engagement on the ACO, so anyhow, there's a number of things we're working on, but I didn't have anything specific.
Okay. All right. The next item is, the process for the organizational assessment. I, reached out to Caitlin, Chief Procurement Officer, and she shared a template letter. She said because it's, the type of project that we only need to request 3 quotes, we don't have to even receive 3 back. So just wanted to include this as a letter. Just to get any feedback on the letter or, dates or the final draft of the scope here. It's still marked draft, so I thought you had said last time you had a couple of things you wanted to change or. No?
No, I think we did
Okay.
change them at the time.
Okay,
I think it's all set.
okay. So the letter that she sent me, is it coming from DPW or should it come from the select board?
I think it should come from the select board.
Okay, since it's not a formal procurement,
Yeah,
okay. And so I assume that it would go to the select board email address?
Yep.
No,
mhm.
and I think time and date, I'm happy to put it out on Friday. Tomorrow, Chris, if you wanna get this going, right?
Yes.
Okay. I guess what typically questions must be submitted in writing, is that typically like a week after?
There's not, it's all based on your assessment of what you think is a reasonable amount of time to give people enough time, but not delay the process. And for something that's, fairly straightforward in terms of, like I said, it's some, yeah, I think if you had questions due by, if you send it on a Friday, you have to assume some people aren't gonna see it till Monday
Right.
or whatever, so. You might have questions due either the end of next week or the following Monday, yeah.
And then when should they be back? What's reason, this is not like a huge proposal.
No, it's not, yeah, I think if questions come in and you're confident that you can turn around any responses within a couple of days of that, then you just put that in.
Okay.
That part's just giving yourself enough time.
Okay. All right, so we're good on that?
One thing I talked with Chris about this afternoon and I wanted to bring up, I think none of us have the expectation, I believe, that this is getting into, for instance, structure of like public safety departments. Or do we know that?
That wasn't my intent, I was.
I didn't think it
town
was.
office building.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but it occurred to me, I don't think we've really been specific about that.
Okay,
And I do think we should be, if we're not looking for them to look at, for instance, police, fire, dispatch. We should be specific about that because someone's gonna look at the scope and look at the budget needs very differently. If they think that's part of the scope and
What about
library was the other.
DPW?
Yeah, or DP, so like,
so maybe it should be the same departments that were included in the wage and classification study.
it's not gonna align exactly with that because there were non-union positions in the police admin or certain DPW facilities positions that are not union. So I know when I talked to Chris this afternoon, he said he's been picturing the town office building, and I think that's what I've been picturing. I think
Okay.
that's what you've been picturing.
Yeah.
So I think if we're just explicit about that,
Okay. So. Should I be including anything like an org chart or so they have some, or can they just find that stuff online?
no, I would say we should, that'd be a great thing to include.
You just had ones in the packet a couple of
I
weeks
did,
ago.
yeah, I did. I
Is
have a
that
current.
updated though?
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it was updated and proofed.
Okay. Is that enough background information? I assume they can do their own research online.
Ask a question too, right?
Yeah,
And you could put in some hyperlinks to the town manager act as linked from the town manager page on the website. the town bylaws. I don't know how much they're gonna wanna dig, but, I think at minimum, I think the Town Manager Act is pretty important for people to be aware that it exists and at least peruse it.
And in terms of, like a list of committees, I guess the website
Yeah,
will have that.
yep.
Okay. All right. All right, final discussion item is the PEG. Or did you have something else on that, Angus?
No,
Okay,
great. So when we put this on the, so I've been, I had asked, I met with Adam a couple of weeks ago. We've got kind of a continuing dialogue on both, we were looking at both FY 27 needs with regard to the PEG standard reauthorization of town meeting, but longer term with regard to the negotiation of the cable license agreements. I had asked him to think kind of more like 5+ years. And so he put together a really nice, what I think is a really nice list of different items, and he's actually costed out like what they would be, and he actually went so far as to get like actual pricing on all of these things, even though these are longer term things. So I was, when I had asked you to put this on the agenda, earlier this week, I had thought I was gonna include that, but I decided to leave that out of the packet because I did want to just present verbally what the projects are, and we can talk a little bit about that. And I do want to, as we look ahead to engaging with Verizon on the license agreement, I'd like to have something that's clear that we can put out, and then when we do have that public hearing for public input on use of the PEG funds, there's something to respond to, and people can say, oh, we like this, we don't like that. What about this other thing you didn't think of? But we're talking about upgrades to the AV and technical kind of fit up for both this room and the upstairs hearing room. Adam can talk about this much more eloquently than I can, and I don't know if he's on the meeting tonight or just setting the recording, but he's talking about microphones that actually hang from the ceiling and do a much better job of picking up decentralized inputs. So it's more hardwired for what we're doing rather than just the spot microphones. So he's costed out for both the first floor hearing room and the second floor hearing room. Ceiling mounts, different cameras, different equipment and hardware, SD cards, different things. So those are 2 of the 6 items. The third would be camera kit upgrades, and that's something that came out of a suggestion that Timothy Friend had given us in terms of just the quality of some of the equipment we have relative to what he has as an independent. And he was basically saying he said it very nicely, he said his equipment's way better than ours. So I asked Adam to kind of cost out what that would be. Let me throw some numbers at you just so the meeting room upgrades, each of those come in at just about 20K, so significant. Camera kit upgrade, looking at a little over 3,000. Just some expanded storage, 16 terabyte hard drive. That's about 3 of those would be about $1,100. Those are $375 each. Server room upgrades, that includes, and I think this is very interesting. There's a service called Smart Caption, which in part of the price is a certain number of hours of automatic translation of video to like closed captioning, which as we look ahead to this ADA compliance, I think it's going to be something that putting some resources toward that's going to be really of value. So I was glad I haven't touched on that, but he's got a bunch of server room upgrades, and some of these terms, frankly, I'm not really very, conversant on, but that's about $25,000. And then he talked about like a podcast studio, which we've had some follow-up correspondence on that, because I didn't really know what it meant, but he said that initially that would be a small dedicated space equipped with microphones, headphones, a mixer interface, and a camera. We're recording audio and video interviews. Ideally, we have a simple semi-permanent setup, so it's easy to use. Could be at the library, could be a town office, location TBD. But could be a starting point for recording town department updates, board member interviews, and continuing the town history project in a more streamlined way than the separate camera setup each time. So he did some work on that. That would be a little under $5,000. So all in, that's about $73,000 of work, which when you look over a 5-6 year time horizon,
Pretty good.
is pretty good. So I think it's great. We're making progress on that. I decided against putting all this into tonight's packet because I'm not really ready to like get into all the nuts and bolts, but I can send it around to you guys and you can give some input. And the plan is, or the goal is to keep moving forward so that we have something tangible. So when we have the public hearing, we can get that input. And really, so when we get into negotiations with a cable provider, that we can be very assertive in what we need and why we need it, and what are the, we're not bound by those specifics, but we certainly want to go into it with a clear sense of why we need the money. That's gonna be very important to our negotiating position.
Yeah. So can he kind of do a 5-year projection of which things he thinks should happen first and?
Yeah, that would be kind of the next step. I didn't have him do that for this, but that would be, to put it into more of like a mini capital
Yeah.
program.
That'd be great.
They're not capital per se, but yeah,
Expenditure.
sounds it.
yeah. Couple of them are pretty big ticket items.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Those are durable expenditures.
Yeah. So,
I had one question, the public survey, is that something we could use PEG funds to hire somebody to do that?
you could,
I mean, what do you think about that, Chris? If this is part of the ascertainment process?
Don't need to yet.
Yeah. Well, who else is gonna do the public survey? Not me, not it.
yeah, and we have a bunch of guidance we've got from KP on the ascertainment process and every step along the way. And one of the things in the public survey, and it is optional, but I think it's always a good thing to do. As long as it's properly designed, but part of what it's looking for is current cable customers giving input on whether they feel their provider is meeting their obligation. So it's includes things like downtime, or which is it's where we have 2 providers in town and it's a subset of the residents. I think we would want to do a survey that has some questions that are for everybody and other questions that are, for instance, just for people who have Verizon subscriptions. And then when we get to Comcast, which would be a year down the road, we would do the same.
Do you know offhand the number of residents that are subscribers?
Not offhand.
Seems like I've heard that number before, but it's. Just curious.
That would be easy to get. We get our quarterly,
Oh, it's on there? Is that?
I don't know if it's on there, but if it's, even, that would be the first place I would look, and if it's not on there, it's something we could easily,
Okay. So would the survey just be to subscribers? I mean, that seems reasonable. They're the ones that are paying for it, right?
It does seem reasonable,
Yeah.
yeah. But that would rely on us being able to get from the company
Who their users are.
addresses of, which I don't know. I mean, I was
They're
thinking,
not giving that up.
I was thinking more along the lines of a survey that went to everybody, but that would have certain sections that would just be for, Verizon customers.
Okay. All right, correspondence, any questions on either of these, Chris, any of these?
Well, I read the bridge thing. I don't see how that has impacted us really.
Yeah.
I looked at the one with the public utilities and the energy for affordable ratepayers. We can tell legally read understand it.
Yeah. Pretty
Okay.
dense.
We get these and I struggle with, cause it's like,
We'll put it in, right?
yeah,
But basically what it's saying is they're gonna have a program to reduce energy costs for certain low income users. What that means is your energy bill's going up. right? Because it comes from, well, that's what it means.
Cribs note version.
That's it, that's the summary. No degree required. Yeah, that's the takeaway on that one.
Yeah. Okay, future agenda items, so I alluded to this, so we have to revise the dog bylaw to include that Ollie's law thing that Amanda presented a couple meetings ago. In revising it, she saw what I saw when I revised it last time, that it's in terrible shape in terms of format and organization. So she went ahead and took a crack at revising it. So I'm wondering, do we want to take a chance of people getting all freaked out because the whole bylaw's been rewritten, or, or just focus on what we need to pass, just add a section for the Ollie bylaw. I think Ollie's law, so. That's the question. We can put it on a future agenda. If you have a quick answer, then I think that would give Angus and.
You say the word dog and you put it in a town meeting and irritate people no matter what, so go for what you wanna do.
Alright, there you go.
That was kind of my thought, is, if we, and I did look through the work Amanda did, I think it's great.
Yeah.
And,
Excellent.
so I think if we think that's a good thing to do, let's put that out there, and if,
Are we in jeopardy if it fails and we don't have the Ollie's law?
well, I mean, one thing you could do is get that out there, we could have it on a future meeting with, public input, and if it seems like it's gonna be a real lightning rod, you could always, reverse course and just do the always law.
Yeah.
But I feel like if it's a good set of changes, and it is, prior to some of the changes you made the last cycle, it was stale. I don't think it had been really updated for a long time.
No, it was just confusing the way
Yeah.
it's organized and.
So, but the kind of critical path for me, and I think I've gotten the input I need, is I wanted to send the draft she's been working on to Sam, and more importantly to KP. And I didn't want to send them what is a pretty lengthy set of revisions if that was not the direction we were going. So my takeaway is I'll get that off to KP and Sam, get their input. And then we can have that. I had that penciled in for the March 12th meeting.
Mhm.
But again, if FinCom decides they want to weigh in on that, that might change.
I don't think they did last time.
I don't think, my guess is they're not going to.
Yeah.
I think they certainly will on things like fee bylaw, but for these others, they're really non-financial. I don't think they're gonna need to do that.
So what other, I'm
So
just wondering about
there's 5.
public hearing, we don't have to have a public hearing, but I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah.
So, planning board is doing cannabis and,
And the parking and loading.
okay, so there are Jesse and
And then there's the cannabis social equity.
okay,
And the dog bylaw, and, there's one more, there were 5 total that I was looking at as non-financial. So that's scorecard. Oh, the vehicle control,
oh, okay.
yeah, the general bylaw, the vehicle control.
So do you wanna have all 3 of those on 12?
That's how I had them penciled in.
Okay. And advertise it,
Yep,
people can know what they want.
yep, yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I guess let me, before we commit that date, let me see how quickly KP can turn around its review.
Okay,
Cause if they can turn that around by midweek next week, that would be good. If it's gonna take them longer, then I don't want a situation where, it's not in public circulation well enough ahead of time.
What's that truck doing out there? You telling somebody?
only not me.
Been out there for a while.
Looks like they're, moving some snowbanks. It's a backhoe. They're,
Owner from New York, she sent her truck right off the bus.
yeah, they're picking up snow and putting it in a, dump truck.
Now you're gonna say yellow Bronco.
Can't see it anymore, it's under.
Okay, so that's the plan there. Something about that. Oh, do you have the dates, of all of our meetings handy, or is it someplace that's handy?
Yeah, if you want the complete budget cycle,
And ours.
no, I know, and those are, there are 2 different places.
Okay,
So everything that you've set as a date should be on the town meeting calendar.
Okay,
Everything on the budget is linked from the town manager page. There's this, budget information,
mhm,
and that's where this goes.
okay,
So this is where, and I refer to this a couple of times a day. So that's where this is, and then everything that was a regular meeting date is on the calendar.
okay. Do you have questions on this, Chris? I thought last meeting you.
I did, but they came from different documents, they took all the documents and dumped them all on my phone, so better.
Okay, all right, good. All right. Okay, so I move we recess to executive session for MGL chapter 38, section 21A 2, 3, and 7.
Second.
In favor, read aye.
All right, so for those watching from home, the board will recess to executive session and an open session for the sole purpose of adjournment. Good night.